Thank you for
We can't have a show. We can't really do anything until we say this first and foremost. Happy Easter. Hope you had a great day. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Happy Easter. Remember what Easter is all about. All right. Appreciate you being here. Let's talk spring football. Tons of big brand teams were on the field on Saturday, and more coming up this week. We will talk spring football. We will talk whatever you want as you ultimately produce the show. The phone lines are open at 860-499-3332, and we will post the number to the ticker to the bottom of the screen. After I remind everyone out there that you can contribute to the Voice of College Football through Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Mark Rogers TV is what you search. Search Mark Rogers TV, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. You can also hit us up on the Super Chat. We appreciate your contributions. Also, hit the like button before you get settled, before you start getting into all sorts of trash-talking fights with everybody in the live chat. Whatever you do there, before you call me, before you comment to me and ask me questions, please hit the like button. And, of course, subscribe here to the Voice of College Football. We passed 34,000 here on the main channel today. Thank you so much for that. And we've got lofty goals thanks to your support. And also, we are nearing 100,000 subscribers total in our network of college football channels. And we will keep you up to date on the numbers there. I kind of lose track of them. I definitely lose track of them. But every so often, I'll take a quick glance and do the quick math and say, we're around 97,000 right now. So hopefully we can celebrate very, very soon. Let's talk spring football. And also remind all of you that when you shop Amazon, use the link in the description section to help us build the channel. Meanwhile, 860-499-3332. But again, Amazon is your place to be. When shopping there, please use the link that we provide. I am in no way telling you to shop on Amazon, but I already know that about half of you do. That's what the stats tell us. And you know we're all about the stats here at the Voice of College Football. So please, when you shop Amazon, use our link. It's the same shopping experience for you. Doesn't cost you one penny. Before we get to my thoughts and take your calls, let's go to the comments. We also expect to be here tomorrow night. Be looking out for a time, most likely 8 or 9 o'clock Eastern time on Monday night as we resume our series on disputed national championships. We went through the past decade last week. This Monday, we're going to review 2000 through 2009, the 2000 through 2009 BCS seasons and national championship decisions. And we're going to review them and tear them to shreds here on Monday night. Ferris is here. G-Dog Forever's here. Spring game on Saturday. I watched it. We cut a video here at the Voice of College Football on the SEC and Georgia channels. Check out the video and my impressions on Georgia spring football. I talked quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, defense. I talked alpha dogs on defense. Exploring with Ben. Good to see you. John as well. Whoever the 7th person waiting is, ready to hit the like button. I so much appreciate you, John, Exploring with Ben, and others. Of course, there's many of you who remind everyone just to hit the like button. I think we run somewhere between like 6 to 8% on likes. Look at one of the videos. Just choose one of the videos. We average about, during the football season, more like 3,500 views per video. And right now, not doing anywhere close to that. But it's the off season. It would be nice to do more like 3,500 views per video during the off season and get this cranked up to 10 or 20,000 per video during the season. But anyway, you'll see the likes compared to the views. 6 to 8% of the people. It seems like more than 6 to 8% of the people like it, but moody. We didn't go moody. I guess we could have gone moody. I've done that before. That is typically your first tip off to me having a headache. I've gone moody in the past because I'm like, I just can't stare at these two lights. So I've done that in the past and just kind of chilled. That means I might have a headache. That means I might doze off and hopefully you won't be able to tell. Daniel's here. Good to see you. Cap. Michigan State going 8-4. I started to read that thinking this was going to be some kind of bold, outlandish, we're coming for you prediction, but Cap goes Michigan State 8-4. I actually didn't pick up too much from the Michigan State spring game. I just, here in the last 45 minutes, as I was preparing for the live stream and sending out all the notifications and so forth, I had DVR'd the Michigan State spring game and I let it fly, but I can't say that I really picked up anything from Sparty's spring game at this point. But we will be recapping the Michigan State spring season here at the Voice of College Football, so be looking out for that video in the next few days. Happy Easter, Michael. Good to see you. Sad Buckeye still says go Bucks or go Bucky. Is Sad Buckeye becoming a Badgers fan? Is that what I'm reading into there? Yakov's here. Did you watch any USFL football yesterday? Not a play. You guys will have to fill me in. Or maybe not. It would have been intriguing to me in a different lifetime. Maybe I'll check it out. It didn't cross my mind. And Saturday night, what was I doing? Anyway, I wasn't available. Appreciate that, Joey. Joey is setting us up big time on the West Virginia channel and West Virginia shows on Friday nights, folks. I know that we only have a small percentage of West Virginia fans here, but the rest of you show up for all the shows. Many of you show up regardless of what team we're focused on. And we deliver on West Virginia football every Friday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And it is a good time. And we deliver a tremendous show, not because of me, but because of guys like Travis Kenobi and Coos, Justin Walker, and Golden Blue Dude, of course. And we had a tremendous guest in the Wolfman, Dale Wolfley, this past Friday night. Check out that. But again, every Friday night, please subscribe to our West Virginia channel as well. Harry, good to see you. John as well. Yes, that is the phrase that I typed more than any other phrase today. Absolutely. Daniel says, ain't gonna lie, Mark. Ohio State is far and away the #1 team in the country. My confidence is even higher about 2022. Okay. They are not far and away the #1 team in the country. Daniel, I appreciate your opinion. You are clearly entitled to it, and it is certainly closer to reality than if you were a Maryland fan or an Illinois fan or Kansas State fan saying, our team is #1 in the country far and away. Yes, I enjoy your optimism. You're a fan. Not far and away the #1 team in the country. Exploring with Ben is already letting us know he's going to keep it subtle. Decent chat tonight. Behave, everyone. Already setting the tone. Joey, thank you so much for providing the Amazon link. So if you go up in the chat there, I understand that most of you probably aren't going to be shopping on Amazon like right this second, or maybe you will be. They have so much traffic, it wouldn't surprise me if like 15 of you are on Amazon right now. But the deal is you take that link and you put it somewhere where you will remember it and go to town when you need to. Tim's here. Good to see you. I'm not going to catch everyone. You know that, but just wanted to say hi to as many people as possible, including Pizza Woman. All right, I'm here now, but happy Easter to everyone that I didn't say that to. Happy Easter, Pizza Woman. Did you have pizza even on Easter? I had a fine brunch with my kids. French toast and bacon. That is still, I had enough to eat even at noontime that I'm fine right now. But I expect to be hitting the beef flauta supremes after we're done here. So Pizza Woman, appreciate you being here. Cheryl, Pizza Woman. Oh, I'm going to be really bad at trying to point out our other fairer side of the sex spectrum. But Cheryl and Pizza Woman come to mind first and foremost. And Sue Zabo. You know what? You should be my recruiters for more of the fairer sex coming in. It's about 95-5. That's what YouTube tells me. 95% men, 5% women. Is that a big shock in college football? No. Not a big shock, but still, hey, any women that enjoy college football, get them on in here. And that actually tells me that even though we only have 5% women watching, that they are a silent 5%, because outside of about 3 or 4, we don't hear from any of them. So they just tune in, but let us know you're here. I won't let these guys beat up on you, and Cheryl won't, that's for sure. Joey letting us know that the West Virginia spring game is coming up this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And before we get started on any phone calls, and again, let me post the number one more time. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, MarkRogersTV. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. I appreciate it. That I will post the number. It's on the ticker, 860-499-3332. I want to check out before I get into my thoughts on this past weekend. I always try to set my computer so that I am forced to type in my password as few times as possible. Oh, my word. I didn't have the caps on. Because it seems like with my new laptop, I'm locked out constantly. So anyway, I wanted to check on this weekend's spring games. And as you know, we will come your way on Saturday, live pretty much all day on Saturday, as we did this past Saturday. And coming up this weekend. Ooh, yeah, look at this. On Thursday, now you talk about the diehards having to be here for this one. Illinois is live on the Big Ten Network at 7:30 Eastern time on Thursday night. Well, we've got our Miami show, don't we? We've got Miami from 8 to 9. So we'll be live sometime on Thursday night. But, man, I was actually looking forward to that. Kind of going out. I love hitting the teams that nobody talks about. I truly do. When I looked at Saturday's spring schedule, and you got all the big boys, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, those three in particular, but also Michigan State, Miami, on down the line. I like to see that the Duke spring game's on, Wake Forest is on. I like to learn about those teams. Now, we did put the Duke game on at some point late yesterday afternoon, and it just rolled, and I had it on, and I got to tell you, I took nothing from it. I didn't sit laser focused, watched it. It was just on, and it did me no good because I remember nothing from the Duke spring game. But I love to focus on the small teams. So Illinois does have a game on the Big Ten Network Thursday night at 7:30. Wish we could do a live watch party, but we can't. But then on Friday, we could do that. We can't do this as well because we've got the West Virginia live. Well, you know what? Maybe we have dueling lives on Friday. We might be able to do that because we have plenty of West Virginia guys. We've got Coos and Golden Blue Dude. And we've got Travis Kenobi. They can hold down the fort with West Virginia. And maybe we'll do a Rutgers watch party at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Maybe I'll put a condition out there that if I get so many views or so many likes to something, we'll do a watch party, Rutgers, 7 o'clock on Friday night. Also on Friday night, Army, Memphis, TCU. All right, then on Saturday, that's what I'm going to do. Between Tim and Exploring with Ben, some of you guys that are invested, come up with a good incentive that I could throw out there for a Rutgers watch party Friday night. Whether that's a views incentive, a likes incentive, whatever it is. Come up with a good idea. And if we hit the mark, then we will do our Rutgers watch party on Friday night, because it disappoints me that between Illinois on Thursday night and Rutgers on Friday night that we cannot have a watch party for either one of them. So I can break free on Friday, I believe. We've got enough hosts on our West Virginia show that I could do a Rutgers on Friday night. All right, on Saturday, Iowa practices at 10:45. The Hawkeyes do not do a spring game, but they've got to practice at 10:45, and that's kind of their spring finale. Not on TV. What's on TV? Really nothing on the main channels. It's all ESPN Plus and SEC Network Plus. I don't get any of that. So on Saturday, USC at 3. That's a watch party. USC at 3 on Saturday. Absolutely. That's a watch party. Virginia at 4 Eastern on the ACC network. And besides that, those are the only two that I can see, except once they post them on YouTube a little bit later. But there's a lot of big teams playing on Saturday. On Saturday, again, in Iowa practice, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Baylor, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, West Virginia, Texas Tech, LSU, Penn State. Oh, Penn State's on BTN at 2. How do we work that one? Penn State at 2, USC at 3. Then we've got Utah playing on Saturday, Colorado, USC, Oklahoma. Can't get that one either. Oregon, Virginia, Washington State, Texas. There you go. It's a big day on Saturday with a lot of great teams playing, a lot of big teams, a lot of intriguing teams, but hardly any TV. Penn State, USC, Virginia. That's the TV that's available to me on Saturday. And then if we really want to go hardcore, we've got Jackson State playing on ESPNU on Sunday. Dion and the boys, Travis Hunter, and who's the big wide receiver that they signed. After they signed Travis Hunter, they also got one of the best wide receivers in the country. Somebody will fill me in on that one. I can't think of it. The kid out of Missouri, correct? Not Luther Burden. He went to Missouri, but Daniel telling us that Stetson Bennett looks shaky. Yeah. Watch the national championship game. We have no concerns about Stetson Bennett. Mike, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Cheryl's here. Harry, hit the like button. Any other comments coming in? And again, the phone lines are open. The number's at the bottom of the screen. Michael, when are you going to do Purdue's schedule? So we started with our schedule previews today with Maryland. So this is going to be the schedule going forward. I am going to, it's probably going to cost me views and money to start, but it's going to clear up the clutter on the main channel. I am no longer going to post. I say this with some reservation because when I post Ohio State and Michigan for sure, and then depending on some other things, typically LSU does well, Notre Dame does well at times, Ohio State, Michigan for sure, and then some other teams, Florida, LSU, Notre Dame come to mind that do really well on the main channel. But we want to unclutter the main channel and make it a national channel, just national topics, playoffs, history, rankings, ratings, all that on the main channel and post to the specific team channels. But for example, Maryland, of course, does not have a team channel. Believe it or not, we don't have a Terps team channel coming soon, of course. So I will post the off-channel teams. Purdue being one, I will post that on the main channel. But when I do USC, for example, which I have already recorded, and it's scheduled to be posted, I believe, the first thing in the morning, that's only going on the USC channel. So I know that I'm going to have all sorts of comments, and it's understandable. I'm going to have all sorts of comments come in that say, where's your Ohio State schedule preview? Where is your Michigan schedule preview? Well, they're going to be on the I'm going to put the Michigan schedule on the USC channel. They're going to be on their respective team channels. And that's going to cost me a lot of views and not a lot of money. It's going to cost me a lot of views. But I believe that long-term, that's going to be the way to go to clean up this channel and get it focused. This is going to be call-in shows and national topics. Although at the same time, it's going to be kind of odd because we're going to have all this traffic that's going to be, all the videos are posted are going to be the likes of Maryland and Minnesota and Purdue, because I've got nowhere else to put them. And nobody watches the Big Ten channel. Got to do something with that Big Ten channel. It's a mess. It's got like 8,000 subscribers, but they are not Big Ten football fans. I'll have a video that I will post to the Big Ten channel maybe once or twice a month, maybe, that pops. When I say pop, it doesn't really even pop. The Michigan State spring preview or defensive look, or I had a recent Michigan State video that went to like 2,000 views, nothing special, but the rest of them just die. That Big Ten channel, I think the clientele over there are not Big Ten fans. I just think we converted another channel over and it didn't work, and that's a big mess and it's not working. So we'll have to do something with the Big Ten channel, possibly. Bring it all down, bring down the Big Ten channel, burn it, trash it. 288028, happy Easter to you as well. Appreciate you being here. And I guess we've got our first call of the night. Let's take it. Why don't we? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Oh, whoa, whoa. Hang on. We can't.
Did you have a bad weekend? I mean,
okay. All right, now we can hear you, Corey, because this always happens with my first call. I've got to transition to the board. So we got you. Everybody can hear you. It's Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you don't know who that is, you are missing out, people. Okay, Corey, blast me about taking down the Big Ten channel.
First of all, when you tell your listeners that they're missing out,
they are.
If they're not listening, that's a very controversial.
That's with all sincerity that I say that.
I appreciate that. So here's the deal. Why are you taking down the Big Ten channel?
Well,
I heard your explanation, but I mean, it's got serious potential there, Mark.
I should not have said it that way because I've not made a decision. It just rolled off my tongue that maybe that's the way to go to take down the Big Ten channel. As you well know, and we've discussed this before, there's some kind of art/science to negotiating YouTube and trying to figure out, okay, what's going to work, what's not going to work. My main channel.
Right.
So if I post a Michigan video, I'll take them first and foremost on my main channel. I'll get 5,000 views minimum, maybe 10 or 15,000 views, but I'm going to stop. I'm going to try to be disciplined and stop posting Michigan videos on this channel. Stop posting Ohio State videos on this channel. They're going to go strictly to those channels. And this is going to be a national topic channel. The only unfortunate thing about that that's going to confuse people is, what do I do with the Maryland schedule preview? I've got nowhere to put it, so I got to put it here. So that might be a little confusing. So it made me think about what's going on the Big Ten channel, and it's basically nothing. Nothing's going on there. It's dead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't, certainly I'd be happy to try to work with you, and if I can brainstorm any way to spruce it up. I will say this, let me just put in a plug for your content for a second. I really enjoyed watching that, and this is going to sound crazy, but that Maryland schedule look, I mean, I'm an Iowa guy, obviously. I love listening to that kind of content. So I'm frankly surprised that now, are you planning on, I guess we could have this conversation off the air, but are you planning on doing this for every Power 5 school?
Absolutely.
Was that the plan when you
that everyone
video yesterday?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think it's all algorithm, and I think it's a great way to spruce up interest for the season. I mean, I know I thoroughly enjoyed all 3 to 4 minutes of it. So
yeah, it's a pretty tight segment, and I'll just say this one thing, and then I'll cut you loose, Corey. Is that I used to be a little bit more organized, like, okay, we're going to start with the ACC and do all the ACC teams, but it seems to be a little bit more intriguing for people if I just kind of randomly throw them out haphazardly. And then people start to make requests because they know, okay, he's not doing the Big Ten and going in order. I don't know when he's going to do Purdue, so I better request it. So I get a little bit more enthusiasm and intrigue and build up if I just haphazardly select schools and throw them out there. But I'm looking at our Big Ten views on recent videos, and they're not good, except for Michigan State popped up to 2,000 recently, but the rest of them are just dead. Okay, we've got another Michigan one at 2,000. But look, 31, 56, 84. Good Lord, it's just a waste of time.
What you got to realize, and I'll promise saying this on the air because everybody can look at those numbers. We tried to simulcast our post-game shows last year, and I thought our post-game show really took off. I give Don Patterson and yourself a lot of credit for that. But that show took off, and it had very little to nothing to do with the Big Ten channel. And I think you're aware of that.
Oh, it was
the Big Ten channel just didn't generate any views.
It was the main channel. It was the Iowa channel. It was you pumping it up and promoting it on your channel. Absolutely.
So the main reason I called, and I'll get off the line. I know you're early on here, and I see the list of teams specifically that you have in your title here for this video. But I do see your Florida helmet on the left. I see your Clemson helmet on the left. I want to ask you a question because we haven't discussed this on recent shows, and I know for Iowa fans it's just kind of like pouring salt in the wound. But what's going on with Tyson Fumachan? I know maybe you don't keep up with someone like that, but I mean, he's a backup at Clemson. There has been nothing. There's been nothing for months about his recruitment. Have you heard anything? And then also Emory Jones, he walked away from spring practice, a couple days in. And I know people in the Florida fan base, I've read a lot from Gator fans basically dissing Emory Jones. His numbers were pretty darn good. If you go back and look at it from a non-Florida standpoint, his numbers were pretty good in a very difficult conference, as you know. I'm just curious, your thoughts on Fumachan and Emory Jones being really the only proven quarter. Well, Emory Jones is the only proven guy. Fumachan has not proven himself. But why are we hearing nothing about his recruitment right now? Is it just because spring practice is occurring everywhere?
Well, let me hit on Fumachan quickly. And I believe that he is basically the fourth-string quarterback at Clemson. And that's the reason why he's, made the decision to move on. Because, he got buried. I think it sent a huge message that Dabo Swinney reached out to Hunter Johnson, who was at one time a 5-star who left to play a couple seasons at Northwestern to then come back as a graduate assistant. And Dabo said, no, I want you to play quarterback. And so he would be buried fourth. Fumachan with Clemson. They've got a 5-star coming in, Cade Klubnik, who I believe is going to wrestle away the job from DJ Uiagalelei. All right, on to Emory Jones. I don't know why we're not hearing much concerning Emory Jones because he is in the transfer portal. I've not even heard, and you are probably, you do a better job at this than I do, and that's tracking visits. I don't mess around with that. I don't try to track visits. I talk to enough people like you and others that know who to access and have that information or know what sites to go to. So I've not heard anything about Emory Jones and where he's most interested and where he has visited, and I don't believe it's been anywhere yet.
And part of the reason I bring up those two guys is Fumachan entered the portal back in December, and I don't know how many Clemson fans you have in here, but when he initially entered the portal, there was a lot of, I remember, I shouldn't say a lot of talk, but I know a Connecticut newspaper or website, news site did a interview with his dad, and he was getting interest from some really high major programs. Now, that doesn't mean there's an offer, and that's just what his dad is saying. But to not hear anything, when you have most of these guys who have entered the high-profile quarterback, and he would be considered a high-profile quarterback, whether he was buried or not, because he was once a 4-star. He was just the backup at Clemson last year. I believe his brother is in competition for the starting role at UConn. But I just found it odd. And, Mark, you know that I follow college basketball and transfer portal immensely as well. And there's just been a couple of guys here recently. Callum McRae's a kid from the Big West who had interest from a bunch of Big Ten schools, and he ended up picking Sacramento State. And there was a kid from Penn State that just transferred. He was averaging 10 a game at Penn State. He just transferred to Coppin State. And I'm just wondering if we're going to start seeing that. You know, we already had the five-star D-back that committed to Jackson State this past season, and we're starting to see maybe a bit of that trend beginning with college basketball via the transfer portal. And so I'm just wondering if guys like Fumichan, and I'm not saying Emory Jones won't find a home in Power 5, but do you see that trickle-down effect at all, or maybe not a trickle-down effect, but that carrying over a bit into the transfer portal, that going – I know the Jackson State is an HBCU. That's a different situation, but if you kind of get my train of thought here.
I don't really have a good projection or read on that myself. I do think that it's hard to go unnoticed these days. There's just so much scouting out there, so much television, so much video, and beyond television, of course, everything's accessed online. There's nothing that's not being videotaped and recorded and digitally recorded that we can't see, meaning nobody gets lost. So if an Emory Jones decides I'm going to go to an FCS school because I just, for whatever reason, I really like this quarterback coach, I think he can develop me, and maybe I've got less chance of getting injured. I'm not going to be getting hit by NFL defensive ends every week, and maybe I can put some really good tape together. I that's possible. I don't think it's going to be any kind of trend, but in certain situations, you've cited it in basketball, maybe it'll happen in football as well.
Well, I would love to know the data, Mark, if there is some data from these last couple of years where the transfer portal's really taken off, of quarterbacks who have left their schools, whether they were starters or not, Emory Jones being one, who did not, basically, he didn't participate in spring practice. I mean, we're talking a couple of practices. I'd love to know the data of kids that leave prior to spring practice, don't find a home until after spring practice. What percentage of those kids end up starting that following fall? I would love to know the data, and I don't know how to, that would be that'd be a deep dive into history. But I just don't see like Emory Jones, who's basically, I'm sure he's training privately, but he's not with the team. I mean, these guys aren't being allowed to, correct? I mean, they're not practicing with the team when they're in the portal, correct?
No, they're not practicing with the team. No.
So these guys they're basically skipping an entire spring practice. I don't know. It's an intriguing, as you know, I'm intrigued by the portal. And I'm intrigued at that position due to Iowa's situation. I will say this: congratulations to, I did a segment with your guy Coos at the West Virginia channel on Joe Toussaint from Iowa basketball transferring there. Congratulations to Mountaineer fans on getting JT Daniels. I see a level of excitement in Mountaineer Nation about that ad, even though JT has struggled with injuries and hasn't really seen the field much over the last couple of years. But that excitement is exactly what I envy. So congratulations to Mountaineer fans and fans who have been able to enjoy a change at the most important position in football. By the way, I see the banner. The last thing I'll say, Mark, this is a banner on the screen. Disputed national championships. I'm assuming that means you're going to have me on live Monday night to talk about 1984.
1984, I know, is your specialty. That would be phenomenal to have you on talking about 1984 and Iowa's 8-4-1 national championship team. Of course.
I will be happy to do that. And 1984, Mark, who would be a great person to talk about 1984?
Nobody comes to mind. You're going to have to let me know.
The great Don Patterson. Don Patterson can talk about 1984.
I can talk about 1984. Why do I need to bring on anyone?
Well, no, I'm just saying from an Iowa perspective.
Okay.
He was coaching at Iowa in 1984.
Absolutely.
So
he's welcome anytime. I didn't mean it that way.
Well,
All right,
I
Corey.
will. I'll enjoy the show. We'll talk on Tuesday.
All right. Well, I got to say, I'm fascinated with your intrigue in the transfer portal because you should be less intrigued than anyone. But I guess it's that I guess it's that fascination with having something or wanting something that you can't have, and then you
Right.
become fixated on that. So
yeah, it's something that it's sort of a self torment, really, is what it is. But I don't think it's going to change. The portal's here to stay, as you know, Mark.
maybe you've inspired me to start a new channel just focused on 1984. It's just going to be a 1984
Why not
channel.
just do it? I got an excellent idea for you, Mark. Why not a transfer portal at the Voice of College Football channel?
Oh my goodness!
I guarantee you that would be like people would flock to that. If you could literally compile footage from whether it be me or a bunch of different people and just literally throw up videos regarding transfer portal moves, entries, commitments, throw those up into that channel. I know it's more work. I'm looking at your face and I'm watching you as you're reacting to what I'm saying here, Mark. So I know you're not excited about the idea.
Somebody about 6 months ago wanted to do a recruiting channel, and I had the same reaction. That sounds great, but I'm not going to do it. So, oh, yes.
All right, sir. I appreciate
Corey.
it. We'll talk Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
The great Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you don't know what I'm talking about, from the Hawkeye of the Storm right here on YouTube, get on over there, check out his work. Yes, a 1984 channel, not just talking about football. Maybe, I don't know, I dress like Springsteen one week, and then we do a little Eurythmics, Madonna, of course. 1984, Madonna and Springsteen come to mind immediately. That's right in my wheelhouse. All right, next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing tonight, sir?
Michael, I'm doing well. What's going on?
Now don't forget about Prince for the summer of 1984 because he was really popular too.
Don't forget about what? 1984, Jim Everett, Purdue, I believe, went to the Peach Bowl.
No. Yeah, I was talking about Prince.
Prince. Not a Prince fan. Sorry. Don't like any Prince songs.
No, you never was?
Not.
Oh, wow.
But yes, you're absolutely right, Mike. Michael, you are completely correct. Yes, Prince was yes, front and center along with everybody else I mentioned. Of course, Michael Jackson, of course, 1984.
Yeah.
But for me personally, there's a couple Michael Jackson songs that are good that I would listen to. If I never heard another Michael Jackson song ever, I would not be disappointed. But, I can stomach him on about 3 or 4 songs. Prince, I've never heard one Prince song that I thought was any good. Now,
wow.
John Mellencamp, Springsteen, and shoot, I know I'm going to get ripped to shreds for saying this, but yeah, Madonna in her heyday, I like a lot of Madonna.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. But hey, one thing I was going to ask you about, I'm not trying to get on your bad side, but do you think the reason why the Big Ten channel over itself and in general is not working is because you got a majority of the teams that you already have a team channel for, and the other teams are saying, hey, why should we listen to them if you're not giving us, you have your Michigans, you have your Ohio States and stuff like that. But you figure if the Big Ten channel isn't working, is it because of the other team channels you have that's from the Big Ten?
Well, I believe that you're correct to an extent, and I've thought of the same thing, sure. But I also think that we've got an SEC channel that does better, that does okay. It needs to do better, but it's doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more that I don't remember what the original topic was on that channel. I inherited that channel or acquired that channel from somebody else, and it was some other college football channel, and I don't think we've got the right people subscribed to the channel, and it's kind of in YouTube limbo.
D1?
Yeah, it was an SC1 channel, and I don't remember what he had it as. It was something, and I don't remember.
Yeah.
And we've merged a bunch of channels, and we tried to make them make as much sense as possible, meaning that the Virginia Tech channel was probably originally an ACC channel, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't remember what the Big Ten channel was, but it came with like 7,000 or 8,000 subs. And so we thought we would be off and running, but and again, if you understand about YouTube, if you get, and this is why I hesitate posting certain content here, and I think I've killed myself a number of times posting certain content here, that even though I like it and people like yourself like it, it's not going to do well, and it beats down my channel, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And
I can entertain stuff like.
Yeah, YouTube will punish your channel if you put up like 3 or 4 consecutive videos like I have that nobody cares about. Then they're going to punish me for a while. Like I'm not going to be able to get any traffic for a while.
Mm-hmm. And have you thought about maybe? I know you're talking about maybe taking it down and stuff like that, but have you ever thought about maybe relaunching it when later this year, like right before the season starts, and having someone else do the channel for you?
I'd love to have somebody do all sorts of channels for me.
I would be interested in doing it, but like I said, I just got to get home, and by August I should have all this stuff doing it. I'm just trying to figure out how to go back in and get started, but yet I don't want to have too much on my plate with me doing some writing for you too.
It makes some money.
Just trying to figure out.
It makes a little bit of money.
What?
It makes some money, Michael.
Mm-hmm. It's just my love for college football, especially I'm a Purdue fan and like the Big Ten and stuff like that. I figure if other people can help alleviate some of that, you won't be so swamped all the time.
Yeah, people suggest channels to me, and since I'm talking to you, would I love to have a Purdue channel? Absolutely, I would love to have a Purdue channel, but I don't want to have a bunch of bad channels. I don't want to have a bunch of
exactly.
See, right now I've got about 7 or 8 channels that are not good. They're not. I got a Wisconsin channel, North Carolina channel, Virginia Tech channel. They're no good. So I'm stopping right now and trying to clean up and address making these channels better.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, and stuff like that, I know you'll get it done, but I figure if people can help you alleviate that to where they can do the content for you, but keep it under your umbrella, or is that going to be more work for you in the long run?
Well, I don't know if you noticed this past season, we had a number of people that did post-game shows on various team channels, and I appreciate them doing that. And they did a really strong job. But I've also noticed that people are busy and they've got their own priorities. And even if they feel very excited about something today, that if they don't have motivation a month from now or 2 months from now, they get busy with everything else they've got going on in their life. So I would like to get to a place where I can find people that can communicate, that know football, know their team, and are excited about producing content. And then I can compensate them to some degree or give them some kind of incentive to get views and subscribers so they can be compensated, and that will keep them motivated.
Mm-hmm. But like with me in football in general and stuff, I'm in college football, it doesn't take much for me to be motivated and stuff like that. I'm just wanting to do it where, and I talked with a couple other people and stuff like that, to where when we try to help out Mark though by taking it and doing the channel, keep it under his stream, but run the channels ourselves, so you don't have to work 25,000 hours a day.
Yeah, this seems like a conversation for another time, Michael, but I appreciate your interest. And do you have anything to talk about? Because I don't think anybody cares about our Big Ten channel that's listening right now. So we'll get back on track with the football. So is there anything that you wanted to bring up regarding anything on your mind?
I just wanted to get your take. I didn't get to see the Michigan State or Ohio State. I see bits and pieces of the Ohio State, but I just want to get your take on how they looked yesterday and stuff like that, especially with the defensive secondary.
I think that Ohio State has And I just want to make sure, Michael, that you've got us turned down in the background, because sometimes I hear a reverb and I'm hearing myself about 5 seconds after I state something. So just make sure that we're turned down in the background so there's no echo.
No, I don't even have you. I have the actual channel like on YouTube right now. Stop.
Okay.
That was just I'm getting some food.
Okay.
That's what I was doing.
So in terms of the Buckeyes, Michael, what I was happy to see was they're more aggressive on defense. They have individuals who are more aggressive, whether that be at linebacker, and I'm talking about in pass coverage. They have had, for the most part, since Jeffrey Okudah and that group departed in 2019, for the past 2 years. Still hearing myself like 3 seconds later.
Sorry.
That they have not been aggressive on defense. They've been passive, and the same players and some new players are obviously being cut loose and being instructed to be aggressive, and they're playing the football and showing better ball awareness and better ball skills than they have since 2019.
And stuff like that. And I'm sure Jacob Smith and Harrison looked pretty good yesterday and stuff like that. But what about their running backs and stuff like that for Ohio State? And also on the flip side for Michigan State too.
Well, Trevion Henderson, he is who he is, and that's 15 touchdowns and 1,300 yards last year. So everybody knows about him. Mayan Williams looks like he is a bowling ball. That's his nickname, but he's no longer the bowling ball. I believe that he is really focused on his quickness, speed during the offseason. He looks leaner, quicker, faster. And also they've got a third back who was a top 5 running back coming out of high school in Evan Pryor, who looked exceptional.
And that's what I was saying. Now, what about for Michigan State?
Michigan State, I know nothing about Michigan State. I did not see them. Again, about 45 minutes before we came on here, I rolled the DVR with the Michigan State spring game. I don't even know if you call it a spring game. It looks like Mel Tucker has fallen in line with what Mark D'Antonio did, and that's run a bunch of drills, at least for the first portion of it. So I didn't have time to pay attention to it, know nothing about what Michigan State accomplished Saturday.
Okay. I was wondering. All right, so pretty much everything as far as like the rest of the Big Ten isn't necessarily going to be spring games. It's going to be like more like spring drills and stuff like that. Is from what you were saying earlier, like with Iowa and Illinois and stuff.
What about them?
You said they don't necessarily do a spring game, or is it just Iowa that doesn't do a spring game?
Oh, Michigan State had a spring game activity. They just did a bunch of drills, and then I think they break off and like do a second half of play. Iowa's not going to have a spring game. They do not have a spring game. I don't know the last time they did. They're getting together, if my schedule's accurate, at 10:45 in the morning on Saturday, and that's going to be their open practice to conclude spring practice for the public to attend.
Okay. Now, what about as far as like with Penn State and also Illinois?
Illinois is coming up on Thursday night. So Illinois, Thursday night, they're on the Big Ten Network. Okay?
Okay. All right.
So I would love to do a watch party, but it's during our Miami show. On Friday night, Rutgers is live on the Big Ten Network. And I forget who else you asked about.
Penn State.
Penn State's at 2 Eastern on the Big Ten Network on Saturday.
All right. Not bad. And that should pretty much wrap up the Big Ten for this year, right?
Minnesota's last up.
All right. I was doing. All right, Dave, Mark, as always, thanks for taking my call and have a great rest of your Easter Sunday.
Thanks, Michael. You as well.
Yep.
From my past experience being on television, having to hear people talk in my ear, I should be better at that. But it just drives me nuts when I can hear myself like 3 seconds after I stated whatever I stated, and I just continuously hear what I just said. All right. I believe we've got Buckeye fan David on the line here at the Voice of College Football. David, how you doing?
Mark, happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter. By the way, I found that 1984 conversation to be very interesting. Although I did not start to follow college football a little bit more in 1985. I would say 84 was definitely a very interesting pro year. By the way, I want to say that. By the way, if you ever noticed, by the way, the NFL in 1984, every record was kind of broken that year. By the way, in 1984. You remember that in the NFL?
Eric Dickerson, the rushing record, 2105, broke OJ's 11-year-old record. And then, of course, Dan Marino, touchdown passes and passing yardage, which was held by Dan Fouts, had the yardage record. And I believe George Blanda. I believe George Blanda had thrown 36 touchdown passes. And maybe somebody else, John Hadel. It was like a late 60s NFL touchdown record. This makes me want to start an NFL channel. As soon as you bring up the NFL, especially like I would love to do an NFL history channel. I know more about NFL history than I do college football history. But anyway, Marino and Dickerson.
Right. Well, it's also those two other records that you missed from that year. That was the year that Peyton broke Jim Brown's record, was 1984. And then also, this record has been broken a few times. Art Monk broke the receptions record that year.
Good call.
In 1984.
Yes. That was held by Steve Largent.
So, right. And then that record's been broken many times over since then. Of course, Marino's record has still been broken, and then Peyton has been surpassed by Emmitt Smith. But wouldn't you know, Dickerson's record still stands.
Yeah, so Dickerson's record still stands. And as you mentioned, I remember Jim Brown was at 12,312. Peyton got it to around 16, right? And then Emmitt upped it to about 18,3, something in that range. And that still stands. Of course, for a single season, Jerry Rice has all the career records. But single season, Art Monk, I believe the record was 106. That I might be wrong on that, but I think he hit 106. And you've had Marvin Harrison. I think he had Chris Carter before that. Marvin Harrison. Michael Thomas, I believe, has the record right now.
Yeah, a most recent vintage.
Yes, he has the single season
a couple years ago
record. And Randy Moss has the touchdown record for a receiver.
Right. Yeah, wouldn't you know, Moss broke Rice's record, although the one thing to say about Rice is Rice did it in the strike year of 87 in less games.
Very nice. One less game.
So, which is impressive, by the way.
Yep.
I did want to get to college here if I can. But, there's one question I wanted to ask you. I know you've had some conversation with some USC people. What's the general feeling there about Lincoln Riley? And just in general, how quickly do you think he can turn USC around? I mean, bottom line, if I had to say over and under on USC winning the conference and making the playoff in 3 years, would you take the over or would you take the under?
Over meaning that they're going to be successful in doing so? I would take the over. I would say that they will be able to win the conference and get to the playoff. Although, as we know, the first statement is much easier to make than the second statement, more so than in any other conference in college football, because they're going to have to earn it. They're either going to have such an overwhelming record, meaning undefeated season. So even if people question the Pac-12, they beat Notre Dame, they rolled a bad Pac-12, they're going to get the nod, they're in, they're undefeated, or they're going to have to win the games that count. I don't know who they've scheduled the years upcoming, or the Pac-12 is going to have to gain a whole lot of respect in a hurry. But they're going to have to, even with the name brand USC, we've seen Ohio State get left out. We've seen some name brands get left out that had an argument. So they're going to have to earn it. But yes, I am confident that they will win the Pac-12 in the next 3 seasons. The playoff, sure. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I think just a couple things. Namely, I think based on the conference. It's certainly a winnable conference for them. Obviously, we know they've got the recruiting base. We know what Lincoln Riley's been able to do specifically at the quarterback position. By the way, the two best quarterbacks in college football, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, both from the state of California. So we know he probably can find some talent out there. So I think he could get them into the playoff within 3 years. I might lean a little over myself, but I wouldn't be surprised within the next 3 years, at least by year number 3, he has them in the playoff.
Yeah.
I don't know if you okay. I mean, I just think that I think he's now whether they can get him playing defense out there and he can get that situated. I'm not sure, but I think from an offensive perspective, he's going to be able to get quarterbacks and skill players, in that particular region. Wouldn't you think?
Sure, I'm not as sold on Lincoln Riley as most people are, and
okay,
I don't want people to run
really
with that, thinking that I don't think he's any good because, you make a comment and people take it to the nth degree. That's not what I'm stating. I ranked him as the 11th best coach in college football, which is extremely good, but he hasn't proven to me to be an elite coach.
Okay. One last question. I don't put a whole lot of faith in the preseason polls. I don't know if you saw the one that was released by ESPN, Top 10.
Their FPI?
Yeah,
I saw it.
Okay. They had Clemson at, I believe it was 4th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
What do you think of that? I mean, is that just based on reputation, or I wonder how they could come up with that? Because, and I'm not, saying, the spring game is the be-all, end-all thing and their quarterback's not looking great, but is that just based on pure reputation or what?
This is how I understand the FPI works, and I am no FPI expert by any stretch. So They obviously take last year's team and the success of that team, and it's very heavy toward coaching success. And if a coach was retained that's successful, then that counts for a ton. It also counts for a ton if there is a successful quarterback and he is retained. And then to a lesser extent, the rest of the positions and the productivity coming back. And then there's some kind of factor of the recruiting class and some kind of measurement in general. They can't measure in any way each recruiting class and make some kind of projection as to what impact it's going to have on that team. I think it's a very general, hey, if you brought in the 5th best recruiting class in the country, it should have this kind of impact. And so then they put that together and spit out their ranking. And then if you look to the next column, they then match that up with a schedule to then determine what the record should be. So you could have the 5th best team in the country, but be playing in the SEC West and have 2 difficult non-conference games, and you've got a stacked schedule, and they could pick you to go 8-4. Or you could...
No, is it?
Yep, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, is it of your opinion that Clemson's talent level is still that much far ahead of the ACC? Because I still think, for the most part, it pretty much is.
Oh, I think it is. But I think if they don't get their quarterback situation figured out, they could have another season similar to last year. And I think if anybody's going to pick them off, it's NC State. I've got a lot of confidence that NC State could possibly pick off Clemson because they are rock solid at quarterback with one of the best in the conference and probably a top 10 to 12 quarterback in the country in Devin Leary. And NC State brings back a ton of productivity. They lost a left tackle who's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And of course, they lost a share of talent like everybody does. But basically, they bring back most of their productivity on both sides of the ball. So I think NC State, if they've got a lights out quarterback and Clemson is struggling at that position, that's going to make up, as you well know, for a lot of talent gap.
Yeah, I thought Ungalele would have played a lot better last year. I thought them getting back Justin Ross, and I thought he would kind of build on some of the success he had in 2020 where he played pretty well in some of the games where he came in for Lawrence that year. So I mean, I thought he would build off that and have a very good year last year, but he didn't. But I tend to agree. I think their talent level is still ahead of most of the people in the ACC. But I just think this is a crossroads year, a very interesting year for Dabo, because I think you're starting to hear these whispers. Is Clemson going to start on this kind of, I don't know if you're hearing the same thing, kind of this downward trend or downward slide after that dominant run that they had?
Well, I think it's difficult to keep up that kind of pace. So if we were sitting, if Clemson had delivered a Clemson season last year, and let's say they went 12-1, they went to the playoff and they lost. Let's say, let's not go crazy and say they just won the national championship a la 2018, but they delivered a typical Clemson season. I would still tell anybody, I'm a probabilities guy, that I will take the under on Clemson, regardless of if they brought in 3 consecutive #1 recruiting classes and they had just won the national championship, let's say, I would still say it is going to be, I will take the under on them keeping up the winning percentage that they have posted since 2015. It's just not likely.
Yeah, I mean, I always felt that, they recruited at a pretty high level. I mean, certainly kind of early on, those Deshaun Watson teams were talented, but they kind of upped their recruiting level, in those subsequent years. Now, to be honest with you, they never recruited at the level that Ohio State, Alabama, or Georgia did. I thought that, they just kind of period of time where they recruited at a high enough level, but they had the generational quarterbacks. They had Watson, and, they had Trevor Lawrence. Now, mind you, they did make the playoff and win the conference with Kelly Bryant as their quarterback, who did have an outstanding year in 2017, although I don't think either one of us thinks. I mean, he obviously proved he wasn't at Lawrence's level. That's why Dabo made the move to put him in 2018. So, I think a large part of it, too, was, kind of having generational quarterback play, which is, what it always comes back to, right, Mark?
Most of the time, unless you've got a great team that can support a Jalen Hurts or Jake Coker or fill in the blank. Sure, Cardell Jones.
Right. Yeah, I think we talked about like those 2015 and 16 Clemson teams that played Bama. I mean, Bama had more all-around talent, but the reason those were good games and the reason that obviously Clemson won is they were, better at the most important position.
For sure. Well,
always a pleasure to talk college football with you, Mark. You have yourself a good evening now.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yep, bye-bye.
All right, before we take this next call, let me address Roger Dodger here. And Roger Dodger, we love you. Love you being here. You're a faithful viewer. And I get your point. 12-1 USC would get into the playoff. Okay, stop right there. Anybody who's 12-1 that wins their conference is most likely going to get in the playoff. You could replace USC in that statement with Iowa State, North Carolina, Auburn, Iowa, whoever. If they're 12-1 and they win a major conference, the odds are they're going to the playoff. Name me the teams that have only lost one game, won their conference, and won a conference championship game, and not made the playoff. I think it's one, right? 2014, Baylor and TCU did not play a conference championship game, and the Big 12 was too stupid and could not foresee the issue involved, so they did not determine who the champion of the conference was. So throw that out. There was no conference championship game. 2015. Everybody made it that had one loss and won a conference championship game. 2016, likewise. 2017, likewise. 2018, Ohio State. Ohio State went 12-1 in 2018 and got left out of the playoff. 2019, everybody made it. 2020, kind of an odd season because of the lack of games played by certain conferences, but still, that still holds up. 2021, same thing. So yes, anybody who goes 12-1 and wins a conference is going to be in the playoff 90% of the time. This has been proven over 8 years. So it's not about USC. But you can't make that statement without context of what else is going on. Because if USC in an awful Pac-12 in 2018 would have gone 12-1, like Ohio State, they would not have been in the playoff. Because Ohio State has much as they've got more credibility in the sport than USC currently. Of course, it's not even close. But in terms of name brand and bringing eyeballs to the sets, actually, Ohio State brings more eyeballs to now. This might wake up USC and Trojan Nation getting to the playoff, of course, or having the potential of getting to the playoff. But yeah, you could say that about anybody. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, Tim, how you doing?
Hey, doing well. What's going on?
Good. Actually, just really quick right off the top. So Ben and I have been bouncing around the idea. We definitely need to upgrade back to your set there. I think you talked about it a couple of times. What do you think about one of those neon sign, like a neon sign logo? Voice
I love the neon signs.
What
Absolutely.
would your ideal? What ideal set would you want? What's your ideal? Like, what would you
man.
like it to look like?
Tim, so I'll liken this to decorating kitchens and baths. I'm the last person in the world that could go into a decorating store and say, I want this tile, I want this type of countertop, I want da-da-da-da. I couldn't do that. Not that it would look clownish, but it just wouldn't be as good as it could be. But I can look online and tell you, man, I love that. I love that. I hate that. I love that. Same thing with sets. Sometimes I'll be on YouTube and I'll see somebody else and I'll be like, man, I like that set. But for me to construct it myself is difficult. Now, the thing that you brought up with the neon sign, yes, I've always thought that those looks like with let's say a brick wall and a neon sign. Yes, I think that would look cool.
Yeah. You can get those faux brick walls as well.
Yeah.
Like real, absolutely real on the camera.
Yes.
You don't appear to be like a green screen guy, so we can not go that route.
Yeah, I want something I can touch and move and
yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I was thinking, I don't know how I could set it up, but I was looking at prices on them to get one that's going to do it justice. It looks like about between $400 and $700 for like a nice neon sign.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we could, again, the other night, dueling Knowles and Wolfpack members were throwing $100 bills at you left and right. I was just thinking maybe one of these call-in shows, what we could do is maybe you could set up, or I can show you how if you want to. You just set up like a GoFundMe, whatever, just for the money, and then you just go get that sign. And I already have two companies, actually. One's in Connecticut for you, and then one's a national company that would be able to quote you out. You just need to send them, a high quality GIF. A JPEG of your, or PNG. Sorry, PNG is what they said. PNG file of your logo. It doesn't need that high quality because all they're going to do is you're going to run it through their system, and they can actually replicate that your logo on a neon. I think that would just kill it. Like you said, the good backdrop, and then just one or two small LED lights. All you need. New shelf and those helmets would be popping, man. And I do think that'd bring the viewers in. I really do. I think it might be limiting you a little bit, just the backdrop. These guys are flashy. They have half the content you have, twice the staff you have, but they don't have, they're not the voice of college football, man. I bounce around, I watch them all, but you really just, some of it's just flash, and I think if you pop that stuff on the screen, you're going to take off. And then TUSC, the USC, I guess, he and I were thinking the same thing. You're talking about your channels, and you ever thought about pulling it back to just conference first? Just have 4, 5 conferences that the Power 5 that you're going to focus on, and then just bring the teams in, grow those so you get the numbers, and then move move it to smaller. It just seems like it'd be easier for you to get the numbers if you consolidated all the viewers. Like your SEC channel is huge, right? It's because SEC fans are rabid; they're gonna be all over it, and then you can kind of distribute it to your Alabama channel, to your Georgia channel, etc. And then your Big 12. Then you can distribute it to your your OU channel and Pac-12. You could do it, and then you can distribute to your Oregon channel. Just do it that way from top down. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, I got to apologize, Tim, because I'm not quite following your approach there. What do you mean consolidate it? Where? Here on the main channel?
I would not just main channel. No, main channel, and have your Power 5 conferences.
So I should start.
And then have.
So we should have conference channels.
Conference channels to the team channels. So I think you might be dividing your viewers a lot, and maybe a lot of people would tune in for the conference. They say Big 12 fans, we're all going to tune in, and then you have an OU guy on, then you have just the different teams come in, and base it upon that. You have West Virginia after OU. Maybe the channel that you're trying to build up. So I think probably OU is your strongest channel. I'm not sure. And then have the channel you're trying to build up. Have them come on right after your big guy. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways outside the box. Because again, I think you have all the talent in the world. I really just I love your passion. I love the fact that you quit the mothership and you're just doing it on your own. I just really think you could take off, man. I look at some of the numbers sometimes and go, why? And I go to some of the other. I swear to God, I'm not going to name my name, but I go to some of these other channels on YouTube that are killing it with subscribers and views and likes. I'm like, I must be missing something. I have to be missing something. There's one or two really good ones out there, but there's a lot of them out there that are getting a lot of numbers, and I'm just kind of scratching my head. How on earth are they getting these numbers?
Well, there is a trick. There is a trick to YouTube, and I did subscribe and fill out a membership and attach myself to an outfit called Think Media Video Ranking Academy, and they kind of take you through. And they, for as much as they know, which is a ton, and they've built this mini empire that's ridiculously wealthy about YouTube channels and how to build a successful YouTube channel. Even most of what they do is by trial and error. They tell you, we don't know, but this is what the trends say. So I haven't committed myself to enough time because I produce too much content. I need to back off and start focusing on business. But the thing with the conference channel idea, though, Tim, I just don't think most college football fans are that interested in the rest of their conference to that degree. Like my ACC guys, they don't care about the other teams. My Florida State guys, I can tell from talking to them, and they have just flat out told me. My Miami guys, they don't care about the rest of the ACC. So if I had an ACC channel, I just don't think there's that much synergy that it's better to have Florida State channel. Boom. You're getting Florida State. That's all. You don't have to guess. I'm on an ACC channel. I'm a Georgia Tech fan. Am I ever going to see Georgia Tech? Do I have to weed through a bunch of Florida State, Miami, and Virginia Tech to get a Georgia Tech video once a week? I don't think the conference channels really work.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, you've been doing this longer than I. It was just an idea. I'm spitballing.
Oh,
I'm just at a point where I'm like scratching my head and going, I mean it, man. Not going to blow anything up your rear end, but I'm telling you right now, your shows are entertaining. Your audience, the people in the chat, 99%, they're just good dudes and ladies out there, and we're just and having great chat and definite passionate football fans. I'm just trying to figure out. Oh, one last thing I would say. I do think that your national shows, you got to nail those down to. I think you just got to pick a time and do it. I know there's a lot of times I wanted to watch your shows and I just miss them because on Sundays, it's variable. Sometimes it starts at a certain time, sometimes it doesn't. If I knew 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, Mark Rogers, I would schedule that because again, the community you've built and the content and just the people on your shows, it's definitely worth the view. But sometimes for me, between having kids and gym and work tomorrow and everything else, it's like I don't know. Last minute, I don't know if I could do it. But anyways, these are just ideas. But I do want to set the thing up for you to get that neon sign because even that we keep everything the same. We move the Sports Illustrated stuff off the wall there. Just slap a neon sign right there. Instantly, you're gonna light up your whole set. I mean, there's some camera adjustments, but it's gonna pop. I'm sure of it. Just a thought. Let me know.
Well, I
again,
love the neon sign.
I guarantee you
idea.
You got enough fans in here right now. If everyone threw like $5-10, and we got some big ballers in this audience. We could make it happen. I mean, and then Ben and I will make up the difference. But I mean, if we could get it rolling, I think just for credibility reasons, I'm a Trojan, so no one's going to trust me to begin with anyway. Why don't we just go ahead and have you could do we could set up the GoFundMe for you. I'll get you those quotes if you don't have time or whatever. I can show you, and you can do your own hunting as well. But this seemed like a pretty good company in Connecticut, and then they'll deliver it for you next day. So just something to think about.
Well, I will say that the two considerations there. Number one, that I love the neon sign. I've always thought about that. I've always seen them for other shows, and like I say, you don't have to sell me on that because I do think that would be a great look. My two considerations is that I've got a lot to consider regarding a lot of things going on in my life and this space. So this space may not be the same space that it needs to be for a set 2 months from now. So that's number one. And number two, it's going to be a little bit tricky to figure out how large, because I know enough from working in TV that camera angles and depth and all that stuff means a lot, but I don't know enough to know how to work it. I know that it's important, but I'm not the guy to figure out. And so how large of a sign do we get? And because that's going to be crucial, because as you well know, the other thing is I come on here by myself, and then every time I have a guest, whether it's one guest, two guests, three guests, four guests, that completely changes the dynamics of the shot, of my shot. Like if I have one guest on,
right,
it then changes the dimensions. Then if I have two, it changes again. And you got to work out all those angles and lighting and so forth and so on. I anytime I broadcast during the day, you probably can tell it's a lighting nightmare, but I don't want to lock myself down into a dungeon. But that's what I should do, because that's what I'm told by my guy Marty that I worked with forever at ESPN. And he goes crazy when he sees my shows and says, Mark, you got to control your lighting. You can't rely on natural light. You got to lock yourself into a basement,
right,
knock out, just go with lighting. But I'm like, no, I can't. I can't work.
Backlight, yeah.
I can't work like that. Like I've got a huge patio window in front of me and another window. I like to be close to daylight, and I can't lock myself in a dungeon all day just to control the light. So the lighting portion of it, until it, at nighttime, you can probably tell that my lighting's so much better at nighttime. Not that it's great, but it's decent rather than during the day. So Tim, those are great things to think about. And we will take action on that. Again, the only determinations would be that, my space here is probably going to change. Number one. Number two, then have to determine how large should this sign be. So,
well, and then following up on Roger's comment about Blue Bud status and 12-1, et cetera. The one thing that is always going to, I believe, as long as there's a committee involved, and there's television executives in that, it's not about even the best teams when it comes down to that point. It's going to be eyeballs. And then the one thing I can tell you about USC. One reason why USC does get the nod a lot of times, one reason why USC is on ESPN this Saturday isn't because everyone, wants to root for USC. There are many more teams out there and schools that are going to tune in just to see how small the crowd is, or make comments about, the quarterback looks like he's, or hate on one of the positions. So the thing is like a Notre Dame or a Miami, or USC, or even Ohio State to some degree, is you got a lot of your fans tuning in, but how many people are going to tune in just to watch you lose? So that's when you get those pop numbers for those TV executives. So a 12-1 USC is going to get the nod over many teams, in my opinion.
Okay.
All right, Mark.
Let me
know what we can do.
Okay, Tim. I will respond to the comments you just made here in a second. Thanks so much for the call. I appreciate your investment in all this. I appreciate the passion. Thank you so much for supporting. I hope you realize that. So have a good night.
All right. Happy.
Oh, I always hate when I think somebody's off the line and then I hit the drop button and then they keep talking. So my apologies there. Okay. All right. Let's understand something. Was USC spring game on ESPN last year? No. The year before? No. The year before that? No. The year before that? No. I could keep going it back through infinitum. Do you know why USC spring game is on ESPN right now and will be this year? Because they hired Lincoln Riley, and it's a story. That's why. It's not just USC, because USC was not worthy in the eyes of ESPN to broadcast their spring game any other year. Lincoln Riley, and it's something going on in college football. It's different than what's going on anywhere else. First of all, everybody in the Big Ten is off the table in terms of ESPN and spring games. The Big Ten Network says we want everybody in the Big Ten to be on the Big Ten Network. So nobody else from the Big Ten is going to be on ESPN. And then if you've noticed, with an SEC network and with an ACC network, notice a trend here, and I kind of know what I'm talking about here, that with the SEC, guess what? The SEC network launched in 2014, I believe. I should know. I was in the master control when it launched with the South Carolina Texas A&M game 2 weeks later. So it, of course, launched with taped programming. Oh, boy. Mark on a USC hatred rant. No, I'm not on a USC hatred rant. I could care less about USC. I do not root for USC. I do not root against USC. You should know me better than that. Oh, my goodness. Just when I put things in perspective, I'm a USC hater. No, when has USC been on ESPN? When has USC spring game been on ESPN? Never. Never. Zero. They hired Lincoln Riley. It's the most intriguing storyline in college football going into this season. Bama's a given. Georgia's a given. I just told you that the entire Big Ten's off the table. There's nobody in the ACC. Dabo's been there forever. That's a give. Everything else is a given. This is a storyline. Sure, they could have went the LSU route with Brian Kelly. Sure. All right. Let's understand something. Let's go back to the SEC network. It launched in 2014. Ever since then, what did ESPN do? Regardless of how big all these teams were, excluding a rare Georgia, Alabama appearance on ESPN's spring game, they put them all on the SEC network. They loaded up the SEC network. Okay? The SEC network is much established. It's got as many subscribers as ESPN2 does. So the SEC network is doing fine. As far as I know at this point, you know, I don't have inside knowledge to this degree now, but the SEC network is doing well. It's doing extremely well. Okay. And it started off, bam, top of the board, had tons of subscribers. They launched it with strength. They had 90-some million subscribers right out of the gate. Okay. So they put all their spring games on the SEC network. What do they do now, though? Starting either this year or maybe it started last year, they now are moving people. So they have gotten people hooked on SEC football, and the SEC fan base is hooked on seeing its spring games now for the last 7 to 8 years on the SEC network. So what are they doing? Boop. It's on ESPN Plus now. It's on SEC Network Plus. We're pulling the rug out from under you. You can no longer see your spring games on the SEC network. You got to go to ESPN Plus because we've hooked you for 7 or 8 years. Okay. Are they doing that in the ACC? No, not yet, because the ACC network is only a couple of years old. That just launched. That was in 2020 or 2019. Must have been 2019 because it wasn't long before I left. So it was about a year and a half, and certainly I remember all that. So the ACC network launched, but it didn't launch nearly as successfully as the SEC network. But what is ESPN doing? They are putting all of the spring games for the ACC on the ACC network. Okay. The reason that USC is on ESPN is not just because it's USC, because it's never been on ESPN before. It's because of Lincoln Riley, and it's because it's the best story. ESPN is about telling stories and narratives and pushing them. Okay. All right. In terms of USC and Ohio State and popularity, that's a great conversation. The USC portion of that is dated. If you want to argue the USC side in terms of popularity and who is going to draw more viewers to television sets, the USC side or argument is dated, number one. Number two, it's more in theory. Ohio State's in reality, in actuality. The highest rated television game last season was an Ohio State game. That's almost every year, and it's almost always Michigan. But then the Penn State-Ohio State game, and not so much because of Penn State, mostly because of Ohio State, is one of the 5 highest rated games of the year. And Ohio State, fill in the blank. If they play anybody else big in the Big Ten that's playing well, Wisconsin, Michigan State, the Michigan State-Ohio State game was one of the highest rated games of the year, even though it was complete garbage and a blowout. It started off as one of the highest. In the first quarter, it was one of the highest rated games of the year. All right. USC. When's the last time USC drew much of a crowd for any game? It's been a while. But they will. But they do not have the built-in audience week to week to week to week to week that Ohio State does. Now, if they turn it around, they will. They will attract the fringe fans, the bandwagon USC fans. They will immediately come back and they'll jump. But they're not going to have Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State on the other side of the field to help drive the TV ratings. So Tim is saying, Mark, USC has sucked for 5 years. What would Ohio State's numbers be if they had the Helton experience, the full Helton? So, USC has sucked for 5 years, depending on your definition of sucks, because everybody has a different definition of sucks. I've had all sorts of people on here that they call and write in and leave comments in the comment section that think that teams that lose national championship games suck. I've seen that. So depending on your sucks definition, USC sucked last year. The year before, they didn't suck. They went 5-1 and played in the Pac-12 championship game. The year before that, 2019, they didn't suck. They played in the Holiday Bowl. They were okay. The year before that, they sucked. JT Daniels one season. The year before that, 2017, they won the Pac-12 championship, played, ironically, Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. They didn't suck. They won the Rose Bowl the year before that. Okay. I know I'm just pointing out one game, but it's still a game played with this team involved. It doesn't matter. Think about the weight of this game versus anything that USC plays. Ohio State and Michigan can suck, and it's still going to be one of the 2 or 3 highest rated games of the year. During Rich Rod and Brady Hoke and 3-9 and 5-7, Michigan, highest rated game of the year, or second highest rated game of the year. During John Cooper, 4-6-1, 1988, 8-4 seasons, Michigan beating them down, highest rated game of the year, or second, or third, top 3 minimum. Regardless, nobody else plays a game like that. Nobody else. Alabama, Auburn, close. But nobody else plays a game where there is a built-in audience. The teams could be 7-4 and 4-7. People still watch. SEC dog. Ohio State lost. I'm going to piss off a lot of people tonight, I think. Because Ohio State lost to the slowest team we played all year, Michigan. That's a fact, y'all. Well, it's a fact that Ohio State lost to Michigan. You got that fact right. Michigan wasn't the slowest team that Georgia played all year. Michigan will produce more NFL players than everybody that Georgia played outside of Alabama. Yeah, Alabama. That Georgia team played last season. And Clemson, it'll be comparable. It'll be comparable. So I know that speed equates to NFL play. Not perfectly. It's not completely analogous. And speed is extremely, extremely important. But it's important in different ways than a lot of people believe it is. Meaning, during the NFL Combine, I love when they show this graphic. They show the best wide receivers in the NFL, and they show their 40 times. Hardly any of them ran fast. They weren't anything special. They weren't slow, but they're running 4 or 5s. Most of the top wide receivers in the NFL did not kill it at the Combine. We're not super, super duper ridiculously fast. Then they show the list of the best 40 times in history. John Ross comes to mind, of course, and I'm just talking about wide receivers here for a second. They show the best times. Almost none of them turned out. Speed's important. Speed needs to know what direction it's headed, though. And if you're the fastest guy in the field, but you took 2 false steps to the left, you're not any longer the fastest guy in the field. If you're playing corner and you're the fastest guy in the field and you got juked by a guy and your 4.28 is taking on a 4.48, yes, you've got an advantage, but you lost the advantage because you're not as good a football player as the guy that you're guarding. How many guys that guard Hunter Renfrow or Julian Edelman are much faster than they are, but they can't cover them? So, yes, speed's important, but Michigan was not anywhere close to the slowest team that Georgia played last year. And SEC dog, I know that you're smart enough football fan to know that. You're just having fun. I get it. And you poked the bear, and I played into it and responded. But Michigan was who knows about the fastest team. They were tied probably with Clemson as the second most talented team that you played last year. Uncle Rico, appreciate the super chat contribution. Thank you so much for that. And I'll take this call in just a second after I answer this question. What are your thoughts on the fact that Notre Dame has not won a major bowl game since 1994? Hard to imagine, right? Poverty program. And they've played about 8 or 9. So Lou Holtz against Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl of 1994. They beat Texas A&M for 2 consecutive years. And since then, Lou Holtz never got them back to a major bowl game. I think they opted out of a game. They lost to Florida State the next year in the Blockbuster Bowl. Yeah. And then it was Bob Davie, Ty Willingham, and Charlie Weiss. And my goodness, I think that Notre Dame, going back to SEC Dog's comment about speed, they look at the NFL drafts that Notre Dame put down between like 1995 and 6 or 7 years ago. Notre Dame, their NFL draft production plummeted plummeted after Lou Holtz and did not recover until about halfway through Brian Kelly's tenure. And now they're producing those kind of players. So if you look at the way Notre Dame's performed recently against the elite, it's much better. It's not great, but they hung around with Alabama a couple years ago, and that Alabama team in 2020 was better than everybody else by 2 touchdowns minimum. And they did beat an LSU team in a bowl game in the Citrus Bowl in 2017 that was, from a talent perspective, was good enough to be a major bowl team. And they split 2 games with Georgia, those Georgia teams that went to the playoffs and went to a national championship game. Notre Dame lost those 2 games close. But what do I think of that? I think that Notre Dame did not recruit anywhere close to the level of Lou Holtz. And even at the tail end of his tenure, they were starting to down cycle. And Bob Davie and Ty Willingham and Charlie Weiss could not sell the program to that degree, considering the recruiting restrictions and the recruiting challenges because of academics. And it took Brian Kelly a long time to get to that point. And when you play in major bowl games, you play one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. So that was Alabama beating them down twice. That was Ohio State beating them down twice. LSU in the Jamarcus Russell Sugar Bowl of 2006. All right, let's get to this call here. You're up next here at the Voice of College Football. Thanks for calling.
Hello, Mark. It's Still Real MVP. How you doing on this Easter?
I am doing just fine. Happy Easter to you. Appreciate you calling.
Yeah, no problem. Happy Easter, and God bless this beautiful day.
Absolutely.
So, Mark, we got some college football to talk about. There was a lot of spring games, but I can't believe Mario Cristobal hasn't even played 1 game yet, and he's already getting booed by Miami fans. I mean, they couldn't even wait 1 game, Mark. That's kind of sad.
Well, I understand that was directed toward Miami wide receivers dropping passes. So I guess he's responsible for that. Well, ultimately, he is responsible for that. But in a spring game, let's give the guy, give him a pass for now.
Yeah, it's a home introduction is you're having your own fans boo you for talent that's not even yours.
Yes.
The last head coach's talent in Manny Diaz. I'm sure that's just great environment, great recruiting pitch for all the recruits that could have been there. I mean, like, if you go here, your own fans are going to boo you because you want to drop a ball in a spring game that doesn't count toward anything.
The spring game. Yes. I guess I'm not saying this. This isn't the most popular thing to say, considering everybody that's listening right now, but there's a lot of college football fans that aren't real bright.
Yeah, well, you can just expand that to people in general. And my source of that would be anytime you go on Twitter ever.
That was going through my mind as I said it too. You're right. College football fans are just a microcosm of everybody else. So, I got to say, when I have conversations with certain people on here, and you know who I'm talking about, you've heard most of them, have conversations where they display no logic, no reason toward any kind of argument. It doesn't surprise me that I look out in our world and in our country and I see what I see and I hear what I hear on social media and other places. And I think, well, those are the same people.
Yeah. Yeah. It is the only thing that is surprising, Mark, is you having the patience to deal with the unreasonable.
Yeah. There could be worse things.
Yes, there could be indeed.
I used to have to deal with the unreasonable in corporate America. That was much worse. I can always just hang up on these people.
But you never do, which is fascinating. I don't think I've ever seen you, except for the guy who was claimed that even though Team A beat Team B, Team B should have got the title. Other than that guy, I don't think I've seen you hang up on anybody else.
I've probably hung up on about 5 people, but I consistently warned them, if you don't shut up or you continue to make the same stupid point that you've already made, I'm going to hang up on you. Like, I've warned them and told them, do not say that or do not do that again. Or I'm going to hang up on you. So at least it was a warning. So it wasn't a true hang up.
So, Mark, do you happen to catch UCS uniforms that they were wearing during the spring game?
I'll have to look these up.
Well, they didn't have numbers on them. They had QR codes, and if you scan the QR codes, it would take you to their social media page, and there being whoever player's QR code you scan.
Okay, well, that's somebody was thinking overtime. Interesting. I did not hear about that. Okay, I see it here. So at what distance can this be done that you scan this code?
I don't know. And you can do it with your phone. You can scan QR codes with your phone. So I guess it would just depend on what type of phone you have, because some of the phones can scan pretty far out. So I don't have a solid answer for you, unfortunately.
That's strange. Okay.
Do you think this could be a possibility of, like, Coinbase, those cryptocurrency and stuff like this? Do you think they could potentially do like an NIL deal? Because they had a Super Bowl commercial where it was just a QR code. Do you think they could do an NIL deal where they put a QR code on the player's jersey and take you to the website?
So these players better be prepared for this, because there's a positive side, a side of benefit to this. Of course, popularity and money and all the things that could come through this, but they're also going to open themselves up for it to be easier in real time for people to say, you just dropped that pass, you suck.
Yeah.
They may not want to come to the sideline after a series and check their phone, because, the drop or the time that they just got burned or whatever it is might blow up their phone.
And so you think it would potentially create more toxicity among the fans and players?
Makes it a lot easier.
That is true.
And it almost entices the fans to do it as well. So in addition to just making it easier, like, okay, CJ Stroud just threw an interception. Oh, I've got to look him up on Twitter, which isn't difficult, but still, we all know how lazy everybody is with social media. I got to look him up to say, you suck. Now, he's inviting me to, and of course, I'm not directing it towards CJ Stroud, but that particular player or team, they're inviting me to interact with them. So that is in a good way, but also invites in a bad way.
Okay. And did you see Spencer Rattler's comments he made about the Oklahoma culture?
Oh boy, I can imagine. So he left Oklahoma and he got booed, and the Oklahoma fans were not good to Spencer Rattler in much of the same way that you're talking about Miami and how they behaved this past weekend. So I am not in agreement with the way he was treated at Oklahoma. I just don't think that players should be on the field and fans should be chanting for other players. And I just think that's classless. But the more these players can benefit and get paid, then again, it invites more of a professional type atmosphere on a college campus. So what did he have to say about OU?
He claimed it was a toxic environment to be at and that he wanted out.
Well, I think we grab a hold of these catchphrases and people blow them out of proportion. Now, he might be right, but I am thinking that the word toxic, like other phrases in our society, have become a little bit too easy to latch onto. And toxic might just mean he got his feelings hurt.
Yeah, well, I think that's getting your feelings hurt. I think there's a lot of code words that symbolize that exact phrase nowadays, Mark. But did you see Brian Kelly? He said that the reason he chose LSU was because there was more paths to win a national championship than there was at Notre Dame. What do you think about the comments, and do you think that's true?
Well, I think going to LSU in the SEC is it all depends on winning. It all depends on first of all, not even trying to project on what's going to happen with this playoff. If the playoff expands, then the SEC is certainly going to flood the field with more teams. And I would think in the average year, let's say it expands to 12 teams, I got to think that the SEC is going to have 4 teams in the playoff. So if you're the 4th best team in the SEC, then you're going to make the playoff. So I got to think that went through Brian Kelly's mind in accepting that job, as opposed to Notre Dame, where we just saw them go 11-1 and not make the playoff. So he's got to win in the SEC, but the margin of error is going to expand as it will for everybody else. But the SEC is going to continue until proven otherwise, going to continue to get the benefit of the doubt, especially if there's a committee and there's not much of a system. If it continues to be a committee selecting teams, then the SEC is going to continue to get the benefit of the doubt. And he's probably correct that there are going to be more avenues for the SEC.
And what do you think about him just saying it, though? Because there's a lot of times things that coaches want to say and are true, but they shouldn't say. Do you think this falls into that camp?
I like when coaches are honest and forthright and speak their mind, as long as they're not tearing somebody else down who doesn't deserve it, who hasn't warranted it. Like, I didn't like Lane Kiffin responding and blasting Jimbo Fisher because I thought it was unnecessary. Now, he has every right to, and what he said may be partially true, probably is at least partially true about Texas A&M going out with more resources than Ole Miss and buying players. But then Lane Kiffin could also understand that there could be 50 other coaches in the country that could point at him and Ole Miss and say, well, you can buy more players than we can. So I thought that was unnecessary. But Brian Kelly's just talking about the system. And so I welcome and enjoy him being candid about that.
Okay. And out of all the spring games you've seen so far at this point in time, what team has exceeded your expectations the most, and which one has exceeded or has been the most disappointing?
Well, I would say that I had a certain perspective on that when I sat down, but I have learned from Daniel Hemry here in the chat that Ohio State by far has the number 1 team in the country. So he has corrected my thinking on that. So he has let us all know that Ohio State by far has the best team in the country. So we should be expecting Ohio State to win every game by 50 points, and they will win the national championship game by, I guess, about 4 touchdowns. They by far have the best team in the country. I guess I was impressed. I don't know if you heard me say that I was doing some other work and so forth, and I DVR'd everything possible, as I always do, and I just have a quirky kind of way about me, maybe, that instead of watching some better teams, I opted to let Duke roll. We're going to let the Duke spring game roll, and I'll see what I can pick up. And just those guys not tripping over each other, I think, was impressive, because that's pretty much what they did last year. Them being able to, they executed the snap. They got the snap from the center to the quarterback. That was a step in the right direction. So,
well, did you watch any of the Oregon State spring game?
Oregon State. Yeah. Well, we've got our guy Connor. We've got a few other Oregon State fans here. So I thought that Oregon State was coming up this weekend. So they were last weekend, huh?
I thought they were this weekend. I don't know, honestly, with how many spring games are happening.
It should be.
I could be wrong.
It should be on YouTube here. There. I think you're right. So it's right here. I could watch. Well, I don't know if the full game's here. And of course, knowing what we know about YouTube searches, even though I specifically typed in Oregon State, they still think you're meaning Ohio State. So there's two searches here with Oregon State that I can watch the cut down, the 15-minute cut down of the Oregon State spring game highlights. So I'll do that at some point.
Okay. And I mean, Daniel is claiming Ohio State's #1 team. I watched a bit of the Alabama spring game. Alabama didn't have anybody to guard number 31, Will Anderson. So
yeah.
Their left tackle position might be in some trouble, Mark.
Well, that's what I gathered from that game is that Jalen Milroe, their backup quarterback, who was probably going to be the third stringer to Paul Tyson, he didn't complete a ton of passes, but he's impressive athletically. And that, yeah, the offensive line for Alabama to be as good as they were, and they had a lead in the national championship game with 4 or 5 minutes left in the game. By Alabama standards, their offensive line wasn't good last year, and their offensive line is always really good. Their offensive line couldn't produce a ground game. They couldn't run the ball against Auburn, LSU, and a few other teams. Those two in particular, they basically just shut down the running game. They couldn't even do anything. And then on top of that, their receiver play, once Jameson Williams went out and John Mechie, their receivers I don't think they're bad. When I say that they were bad, they played badly, but they're not bad. They're top of the line recruits, but they dropped key passes in the championship game. That Alabama outfit's pretty good. If they can bring their worst receivers and worst offensive line to the field and still come within like 3 minutes of winning the national championship, yeah, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, well, there's a reason they're the greatest dynasty in the history of college football, and they've got the greatest coach. I mean, any other school, you lose your top 2 wide receivers by far, and with no offensive line, no run game, it's basically over for you on offense. But
yeah,
Bama still found a way somehow. And the final thing I'll ask, Mark, is there any shot Will Anderson wins the Heisman? Any shot?
I think his shot is coming into the season is that after he was snubbed, it was brought to light that he was snubbed. And he should have been at the ceremony. He's better than Aiden Hutchinson. He should have been at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. He had a better year. Now, his better year probably didn't mean as much to Alabama as Aiden Hutchinson was needed at Michigan. I'll give him that. But I think that opened people's eyes to, okay, this guy got snubbed and he's really the best defensive player in the country. And now we've got a full 8 or 9 months to gear up toward Will Anderson's the best defensive player in the country. And as long as he fulfills that, and it's not going to hurt to maybe strip sack Max Johnson to win the Texas A&M game, or, have a scoop and score against Auburn to close out the Iron Bowl or whatever. If he could have 2 or 3 wow plays, and he has wow plays every week for real hardcore football people. But I mean, to where anybody could be like, wow, that was crazy. Like Roy Williams for Oklahoma jumping over the line, or David Pollock jumping over the line, stripping the ball out of the quarterback's hand basically and scoring a touchdown. That's crazy stuff. He needs probably 1 or 2 of those.
Okay, well, that's all I got for you, Mark. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. The real MVP. Appreciate you. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, and quickly before we get to these other 2 calls, Corey I'm guessing Corey's a Notre Dame fan. Says, Mark, do you think Notre Dame is a bigger brand than Ohio State? In 1950, yes. In 1975, yes. In 1990, yes. In 2005, no. 2010, no. 2020, no. Could Ohio State leave the Big Ten, get their TV deal, and throw their weight around like Notre Dame? Well, Corey's not asking a question. He is emphatically stating something he doesn't know. So basically, if I answer this question, understand that I don't have an ego the size of Corey where I already know the answer. I don't know the answer. I can't see into the future. So I can only put 2 and 2 together and do my best. But Corey's smart enough to know that if Ohio State left the Big Ten, and thank you so much for the super chat, Corey, I appreciate it. If Ohio State left the Big Ten, Corey knows they would fall flat on their face. There is no doubt that if Ohio State left the Big Ten, they would be Rutgers in 3 years. Yes, you're right, Corey. Ohio State would be off the map. There would be nobody here talking about Ohio State in 3 years. We would have no idea they exist. Their games would be broadcast on ESPNU. Yes, absolutely. Ohio State would cease to exist and be oblivious to all of us. Absolutely. Meanwhile, Notre Dame over the last 20 years, how well is Notre Dame doing? Yeah, they're doing really well. They've got top 10 teams, and certainly Brian Kelly, again, the back half of his tenure has produced really good recruiting classes that have lifted them to a certain place in college football again, and I mean on the field. But I don't know, for a long time, Notre Dame got to a place, and you're talking to a guy that watches as much as I possibly can watch. If Oregon State and Washington State are on the field at 2:32 in the morning on Saturday, I'm watching. And I haven't heard up until the last couple of years making a playoff in 2018 and in 2020, and that weird deal they made with the ACC, where the ACC, listen to me, idiots, you are morons for making that deal with Notre Dame. You didn't need to do that. They did nothing for you. They then left, and it would have been hilarious, and I said it at the time a million times, if Notre Dame would have won the ACC that year and then left. Just the ACC must think nothing of itself. They must have the self-complex of, I was going to name something, but I won't. Yes. So you're right. Corey, you're right. Ohio State, if they tried to do what Notre Dame, no TV network's going to touch Ohio State. No. They are probably going to be on the True Network. Their games against, and they'll probably schedule a bunch of MAC teams. Yes, absolutely, Corey. Ohio State could not pull off what mighty Notre Dame pulled off in being an independent. Absolutely, you're right. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Joey.
Hey, Joey. What's going on?
No, I'm not lying. Okay, so I'm gonna fit right into what you just went through there, because I looked up and checked out the top television ratings for all the schools, and this was composed on the August 12th, 2021.
Okay. And
it covers the years 2015 through 2019.
All right.
Okay.
Where is this so I can follow along?
Okay, this is at medium.com. Run it back with Zach Miller.
Media.com?
Medium. M-E-D-I-U-M.
Okay.
Run it back with Zach. August 12th, 2021. Now, this is the TV viewership, and it includes every Power 5 team, AAC team, Mountain West, Notre Dame, BYU, and Army.
Okay.
And number one on this list, Ohio State, 5.19 million viewers. Number two, Alabama, 5.9 million viewers. Number three, Michigan, 4.18 million. Notre Dame is number four with 3.6 million. And LSU is number five with 3.2 million.
Okay.
So Ohio State, they would probably have a hard time making it on their own, wouldn't they? 5.19 million viewers, the average viewership. And I've got the list here. If anybody wants to type in their team, I can look it up real quick and tell them where their team ranks. My team, West Virginia, is in 30th, 1.27 million. But that's third in the Big 12 behind Oklahoma and Texas. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it sure is. On a down season.
Well, it was 2015 to 2019.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
They just composed it in 2021.
Okay.
So, but Oklahoma was number 8, and Texas is 13th, 2.26 million. So, but Ohio State is by far the number one most viewed team in America, 5.19 million. Almost 2 million viewers above Notre Dame. Now that doesn't mean that I guess it's a bigger brand. I don't guess there's a lot of things that go into brand,
sure.
But it is the most watched. So any team that you'd like to know? Or are you following along?
I would love for you to send me that link. If you could do that, that would be phenomenal. So the one thing I will say, not to pile on here, but I will make one other point with that. Obviously, you could have all sorts of rankings concerning somebody being number 1, 2, 3, 4, and the gap between 1 and 4 could be minuscule. Like if that was 5.1 million and then it was 5.05 million and then it was 5.02 million and it was extremely close, then I would say, well, it's inconsequential, even though somebody's number 1 and somebody's number 4. But you're talking 2 million. That's like 40 some percent. It's like 40 some percent more.
I just emailed this list to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Joey.
But one thing that really surprised me was Auburn is 6th, which I did not figure Auburn to be 6th. That one shocked me.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
USC is 16th. And another one that's shocking that I'm sure has gone down now is Tennessee's 18th. But we won't have those numbers for a couple of years to see where they really fall right now. So anyway, but there's some the top 25, it's pretty much what you'd expect. And I lied. PCU's ahead of West Virginia. They're 24th. So West Virginia is 4th in the Big 12. But okay. Well, I emailed that list to you.
Yeah, I just got it. I appreciate
you have
that.
it now?
Yeah. So Tennessee, the one thing I will say about Tennessee, this is between 2015 and 19. They had 2 decent seasons in there under Butch Jones, but like you say, they were pretty bad there. So I don't necessarily think, even if this was extended through 2020 and 2021, that Tennessee would drop. If anything, they just had a season that wasn't great, but it was very hopeful and optimistic this past season. So I bet Tennessee's they're just a big brand, and anybody who's a little bit younger probably isn't aware of that, but they've been a big brand for a long time.
Right. Yeah. Now, a lot of people think that West Virginia doesn't have any viewership, but they're 30th on the list out of 89 teams on this list. They're 30th. West Virginia's got a pretty big following. Another thing too about what the real MVP was talking about, how the UCF game had QR codes on the back of players. I don't like that, because if a lineman misses a block and I want to know who missed the block, I don't want to have to pause the TV and get up and scan a QR code to find out who he was, and have to rewind and find him and miss half the game. So I don't like that. I wouldn't That would not be good for me. So, all right, Mark, I'll let you get to your other call. I just wanted to let you know about that list.
And, that's very cool.
Send it to you.
I like that. Thanks so much, Joey.
Right.
And we'll talk about this weekend. And you know what would be the best thing is to have a West Virginia show before the spring game and a West Virginia show after the spring game. Now, that would be great.
Okay. All right. I'll get with TBD and see what he's doing and let him know that you want to do that. He can get in touch with you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Joey. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy.
Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. Before we take our next call, I don't know that our Miami contingent out there would be too happy if I brought to light that Miami's number 23 on the list. Because, you know, we have this conversation on the Miami channel quite some frequently about the relevance of Miami football. And I can see both sides. The Miami fans, whether delusional or reasonable, obviously lift their status in the history of college football. And the history of college football between 1983 and 01 is as good as anyone ever. But that's only 18 years. Now, since then, does some of that cachet continue? Of course, it continues because there's an effect, there's an impact, and theirs is probably even more so than most. But yeah, they see themselves as some kind of big target that I don't necessarily think exists to the extent that they do. Does it exist to some extent? Sure. When Kansas State plays Texas, Texas is a target because Kansas State players think, screw them, they're Texas. They think all this crap about themselves, and we're just as good. They're Texas. Does Georgia Tech think that when they play Miami? Probably. That, you know what? And I'm not talking about the last couple of years, but you can rewind this 5 years and Georgia Tech players can think, you know, we won as much, if not more than Miami, and they think they're all this. They're not. So does Miami have a target? Yes, but there are probably 25 teams in America that have targets to some degree. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? This is Dr. C.
This is who? Dr. C?
Dr. C.
Nice. How's it going tonight, man?
I'm doing well, While I don't possess any doctorate, I do consider myself a doctor, just like Dr. Dre, just so you know, anyway.
Nice.
But I did have a question, which is kind of an argument on Facebook this evening, and I wanted to get your take because you know old Mark Rogers. So there was a post by Josh Pate that said, if Ole Miss wasn't in the SEC West, they would be considered a dark horse playoff contender in any other conference. And this was SEC on CBS Sports that posted it, and they put that includes the Big Ten. And of course, this caused debate in the comment section. And one of the commenters said, if you look at the bowl games, there is no SEC dominance in the last 10 years. There is an Alabama dominance. That's a different thing. Do you agree with that statement, or which statement do you agree with? I guess should be the question.
Yeah, so let's take those statements individually. The first one about Ole Miss, I would agree that if you put Ole Miss in the ACC, the Big 12, or the Pac-12, that they would have a solid shot at winning the conference. That I would consider them to be right this second, probably the second to third best team in the ACC, to be the Big 12 is going to be an interesting conference. Ole Miss could be anywhere from between Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Baylor in particular, those three. And I think Iowa State's going to take a dip. You know, you've got about 4 contenders with Ole Miss included. Now in the Pac-12, yeah, they could win the Pac-12. The Big Ten, would they be a dark horse to win the Big? Yeah, Iowa's a dark horse. Michigan State's a dark horse to win the Big Ten. Sure, they're Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State. They're rolled up in that level. Sure, but they're not winning the Big Ten. But yeah, they got a shot. Just like those teams have a shot, but they don't win it.
Agreed. And what do you think about the statement as far as like the SEC dominance, it not being the SEC, but rather just Alabama when it comes to bowl games and non-conference games?
Well, as is customary, I had an SEC fan comment the other day that the SEC, whatever games, the bowl games that the SEC loses, they don't care about. And of course, that's nice and convenient. Then it has to be taken into consideration that the games that the SEC wins, they must not care about those either. So I guess they just go 0-0 outside of the playoff. I don't know. But there are games scheduled to be played, and if you don't show up for them, then that's your problem. You must not be a competitor then. So that's anytime fan bases make excuses for losses because their team didn't show up and they didn't want to play in that game. You know what? I think it's a worse statement to make against a team to say, you must not be very competitive. You must not have any pride. So I don't discount these SEC losses in bowl games. Sure. Is there an impact on player loss to the NFL? Sure. If Ohio State would have lost the Rose Bowl this past year, I would have said they lost it fair and square. Those are the players that showed up on the impact of losing two of the best wide receivers in the country and an offensive lineman and a top, they lost somebody along the defensive front as well, I believe. Anyway, 4 players. Did that have an impact? Well, sure. Would they have won the game with them in play? Maybe. I'm not going to make that judgment call. But you show up and play the games with the players that you have. That doesn't mean we can't have a conversation about the impact of NFL players lost to opt-outs. Now, does the SEC have more of those opt-outs than anybody else? That's what I've heard from a few people, but I've never had anybody show me a list and prove it. There's a lot of claims that people make all over the place about certain things. Well, they have to play, this is a trap game, and this is this, and they lose more because of opt-outs. Well, I want to see some confirmation of that. All right. I do believe off the top of my head that the SEC performs better in postseason play than anybody else. And while I understand your point that if you eliminate Alabama, well, that certainly takes by far the best program and best team off the board, but they do play in the SEC. And if you're going to make that comparison, then you would have to take Clemson out of the ACC, and you'd have to take Ohio State out of the Big Ten, and you'd have to go on down the line and do the same thing for the other conferences. I have no doubt that the SEC is the best conference in America, but there are a number of SEC supporters that blow that way out of proportion. I think that's backed up on the field. It's backed up both in postseason play, in games that most people would say matter, meaning playoff games and New Year's Six games, but it's also backed up across the board in the regular season. The SEC outperforms the other conferences regularly on a regular basis in the regular season non-conference play, and it's backed up in the recruiting rankings. It's backed up in the NFL draft. But yeah, I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head. We could go through every team and add it up. Maybe I'll do that in a video, and we'll look at the last 10 years of college football and see how each conference performed against the other conferences. But I guarantee that the SEC is number one.
Yeah, I agree. Wholeheartedly with all that. I do think, though, however, there's some kind of delusion that SEC fans believe that outside of Vanderbilt, the last place SEC team would be top level, in the Big Ten, and that's just not true. I mean, we saw Iowa, Kentucky was extremely competitive. Purdue, Tennessee. they're highly competitive. Granted, Alabama and Georgia, and then many times LSU they're just way above the other teams in the SEC. It's a very solid conference, the best, but also let's not go too crazy. What is it? Ole Miss, we saw them play Baylor, and I know Matt Corral got hurt, but it wasn't like Ole Miss their defense was just crushing Baylor. College football is college football. They're all competitive, but yeah. Well, anyways, thanks for kind of like going through that discussion on Facebook. But yeah, that's a great reply.
I appreciate the call, man. Call back anytime.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, Mark.
All right. Have a good night. You too. And if you look at NFL draft picks, yes, the SEC has the most NFL players, but sometimes it's discussed like it's 1,000 to 50. Right now, the SEC roughly has about 350 NFL players, and the Big Ten has like 280. And then it goes down from there. Yes, the SEC, it can't be argued. I wish it could be argued. I would love to have an argument if it was that close to really be like, oh man, I'm going to start this series and we're going to grind this down to the nth degree. And we're going to go through every game this last season and the season before and the season before, because I want to figure out who's the best conference. I would love to run a series like that, but the SEC is the best conference. But it's not through the roof. And the next conference it's not a mismatch. Is it a mismatch on occasion? Sure. Yes, Georgia and Michigan was a mismatch. But Arkansas beat Penn State in a close game. 2-touchdown game. But if you watch the game, you understand it was a close game. You also understand Penn State was missing half its defense and had what would have been one of the best defenses in the SEC. Penn State beat Auburn. 7-6, 6-7. Pretty much the same comparable teams in their conferences. Penn State beat Auburn. Kentucky barely beat Iowa. If you watch that game, be like, this game's a toss-up. Purdue beat Tennessee. You talk about a toss-up. Falconer Jones. Man, that name sounds familiar. Falconer Jones. What could really set off your name, Falconer Jones, if you put an X in the middle of that? Falconer X Jones. I would like that. Falconer X Jones. Where's everyone on the spring games turf talk? I don't know. We'll do our turf analysis on the spring games. When all the spring games have completed, Falconer, we'll do our turf analysis. Michael, Notre Dame is TV ratings king. No, Notre Dame is not TV ratings king. They're in the discussion, but they're not TV ratings king. Ohio State's number one in the last 5 years, and I wouldn't even say Ohio State is TV ratings king, because it's not like they get a zillion and number two gets a half a zillion. So Ohio State's number one, as indicated by this website that was sent to me, and that makes sense. But would I say Ohio State's TV ratings king? No, because it's not that decisive. But Notre Dame is certainly not TV ratings king. So stop it. All right, let me hit this super chat before we take this call. Falconer, I'm a numbers guy. I put all the numbers into my algorithm. My algorithm says number one offense, Miami. Okay, that makes sense. Number one defense, Miami. Absolutely. Number one special teams, clearly Miami. Yep. Number one turf, Miami. I don't know. Again, we need to look at the turf, but Falconer X, So for 2022, Miami's going to have the number one offense in the country, the number one defense in the country, the number one special teams in the country. And I think when you add all that up, they're going to finish number 23. All right. Next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's John DeLon. I just wanted to respond a little bit to the last caller.
Yeah.
As far as the SEC being a one-team conference, the last three national championships have been won by three different SEC teams. So the one-team argument is stupid also. Even if you discount Alabama's 6 national championships, LSU and Auburn in the SEC West have 4 championships between them since 1998. And the next closest conference only has 2 national championships. So, I mean, I just think that the SEC is a one-team conference.
The ACC would have 3.
The ACC. Oh, they do have 3. You are correct. I forgot about the Florida State.
Anyway,
one.
Your point's well taken. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Okay. Let me hit you with a hypothetical scenario here. At the end of the season, Clemson is 13-0, of course, winning the ACC. Ohio State the same, 13-0, win the Big Ten. Alabama is 12-1 with a 13-1, wins the SEC with a loss to Texas A&M, with a loss to a 10-2 Texas A&M team.
Okay.
Georgia is 12-1, of course, SEC runner-up, and USC is 12-1 with a loss to, let's say, either Utah or Oregon State, who finishes 9, both of whom I think will finish around 9-3. Who gets left out in the cold in that scenario?
So you started me down a path that I thought was going to be impossible to figure out, but you threw in USC. No, USC, the Pac-12 reputation, and not just the reputation, it's reality. The Pac-12 is awful. And
I mean, I do not think that USC is going to go 12-1. I'm just trying to make a point here to some of the USC listeners. Okay.
Yeah, USC.
Go ahead.
And I'm sure there would be people within the college football playoff committee that would be thinking, be great to have USC in the playoff and pull in the West Coast and get USC back on the map, and all that would be well and good for a TV show. But you have all these other powers involved that are concentrated in the South, and then Ohio State. So, but if we're just talking about football, and I think it would just come down to the football, because you've brought a bunch of power brands to the table. Now, if you supplant those arguments with North Carolina, they're undefeated in the ACC, 13-0, and maybe it's Ole Miss won the SEC in place of Alabama, and the runner-up was Georgia. No, it wasn't Georgia. It was Kentucky, and Wisconsin won the Big Ten at 13-0. Then we should have the same. It should be the same conclusion, because all those teams in the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC would have beaten far superior schedules to USC. But then you've got a brand name conflict, and maybe it would prove out that the brand name has more to do with the playoff selections than we think, or that I think. But in that scenario, USC, no, it's not even. There's nobody on there. Maybe if they lost to Notre Dame, and they lost to Notre Dame by 1, but that would be at the end of their season. That would be their last game before the championship game, so that would not help them.
Well, that kind of brings me to the point. What are you expecting out of Notre Dame this year? I mean, I know it's hard to predict what a first-year coach is going to do, especially whenever he fell apart in his debut performance as a head coach. I don't know. I think I could really see anything between 7-5 and 10-2 for the Irish this year.
7-5.
I really could.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, did you saw that Oklahoma State game? They absolutely fell apart, and it wasn't because of the players. Freeman just got out coached straight up and straight down in that second half.
I expect if somebody stuck a gun to my head and told me that my life depended on picking the Notre Dame record correct this season, I think I would go 10-2. But if my default answer, if they said, okay, you get one more choice, I'd say 9-3 because they've got the two obvious losses. And I don't think those are automatic losses. That's not how I want to state it. I don't even think going to Columbus is an automatic loss. And I think that if Clemson doesn't have better quarterback play, going to South Bend in November's a toss-up. But if Clemson figures out that they've got a quarterback and his name is most likely Cade Klubnik, and he's got 9 games under his belt at that point, then Clemson's better than Notre Dame. But and then they probably, there's a pretty strong possibility that they trip up against somebody else, maybe USC, and go 9-3.
So like whenever you say Cade Klubnik is gonna be the starting quarterback, do you think it's going to be like it was in 2018 or 2017? Whenever the other there was another what was his name?
Kelly Bryant.
Yeah, Kelly Bryant, and he started the first 3 games, and then Trevor Lawrence took over. Yeah. So do you think it's going to be like that, or do you think Cade Klubnik's going to start from the start of the season?
I of course don't know, but my guess is it's going to be like the Bryant Lawrence situation, that DJ is going to start the season, and unless he shows us something that he didn't show us all of last year, and to be fair to him, his offensive line and his wide receivers did not play well around him. But I watched the spring game, and he, on a regular basis, cannot deliver a ball 12 to 15 yards downfield, let alone 40.
Yeah, I agree. Not only that, but he gets back in the pocket, and you can tell by the way his head moves that he's looking at that line a lot. He's looking at that rush coming in. He's not staying focused on his receivers. Is also the other big problem with him, in my opinion. Moving on, though, in coming to this scenario that I hit you with at the start, with all the 12-1 teams, I was looking at Ohio State's schedule, and I really do think they can go undefeated, but the Penn State game looks really to me,
Sure.
because it's at Penn State this year, and not only that, but Clifford should be healthy and better this year, because you have to agree that after that Iowa game, Clifford really fell apart. And I remember there were some times just watching that kid go to the line last year, you could just tell he was just in pain by the way he was walking, just in a lot of pain. And it's like one of those things where sometimes you just wish that the kid wasn't so tough, that he would just, go sit in the hot tub or something, man. But do you expect Penn State to be significantly better this year, or roughly the same as last year?
So I think Penn State was better than their record last year. I think that Penn State had one of the 5 to 10 best defenses in the country. They were loaded on defense and really good. They have to find a running game. They had no support for Clifford in the running game. And I probably favor Sean Clifford a little bit more than your average person that watches this. I don't think he's exceptional, but I do take a few things into consideration. One, he had no support of a running game. Penn State had one of the worst, very bottom rushing attacks in the Big Ten and in the nation. They were awful, and they couldn't support him. And he got beat up in that Iowa game, and he was never the same. He should not have played the Illinois game. It was just obvious he wasn't right. And then he got right against Ohio State, and I thought he played pretty well down the stretch the rest of the season. But they got to support him with a running game, or they're going to have a similar season to what they had last year. They're going to go 7-5. So they can somehow find a running game.
Penn State lost.
And their defense, it's going to be difficult for them to play as well defensively this year because they've recruited well, but they had some studs on the defensive side, and most of them are gone.
Well, Penn State lost to Illinois last year, didn't they? And that's whenever all the Fire Franklin talk started, and Penn State fans were just losing their minds. Yeah, I kind of remember that now. It was like a 7 overtime game or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Well, unless you got something else, that's really all I got for you, man.
No, I appreciate the call. Have a good night.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Vandy Dandy. It's great to have a Vandy fan here. Can you get us another 6 or 8 or 10? I think that's might be all of them. Notre Dame was so scared of Vanderbilt fans in 2018. They made almost all tickets bought through Vandy be moved to the upper deck out of camera frame after the Vandy demand was more than expected. Oh, look at Vandy showing up in South Bend. I can't say that I remember that Vandy Notre Dame game. What was, maybe once I see the score, I'll remember that. Vandy, Notre Dame in 18. And obviously Notre Dame won. They went to the playoff. Oh, I do remember that game. 22-17. Yeah, against Vandy's team that played Baylor in the Texas Bowl. It's a pretty good Vandy team. Derek Mason's best by far. Yeah. They almost beat Notre Dame. Yeah. Roger Dodger. Mark doing a live USC spring game stream. I think so, but don't hold me to it. Let me figure out what goes on Saturday, and we'll get back to you. Michael says the SEC does not have the most accomplished players in the NFL. The NFL draft is a crapshoot. It's all about all pro bowlers, and Hall of Fame players. They are overdrafted. I don't know that I'm following that, but the NFL draft is, I don't think it's quite a crapshoot. 5 years doesn't crown you king. Understood. There is no king of TV ratings, in my opinion, in college football. But if anybody could claim it right now, based on the last 5 years, it's Ohio State. But in my opinion, nobody should claim it because it's really not decisive. But certainly, it's not Notre Dame. The best passes in NFL history were versus Ohio State player, or that might be Oregon State players. Okay, I got it. All right. Super chat. DeAndre, Clemson going beat Notre Dame badly. BGPO football funk. I guess. I'm not quite ready to make a call on that game. I think I got a few weeks to do that. Joey, support the live shows by searching for Mark Rogers TV on Venmo, Cash App, and a PayPal, or use the Super Chat button below Thank you so much for that. Matt asking, do you think Michigan has a chance to repeat this year? Absolutely, they do. Is it a strong chance? Not huge. It's Michigan is probably in a group of 3 or 4 teams that are second best in the Big Ten. The closer we get to the season, the stronger I feel that Ohio State's the best team in the Big Ten, which is no great revelation. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's DeAndre. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. I'll give y'all a quick breakdown of I heard y'all talk about Clemson and, DJ Ukulele. Let me tell you this. Then they start off with Georgia Tech. And I know Clemson only beat Georgia Tech 14-8. But I'm telling you, I think I don't know if you remember this conversation when you had. I asked, why was Clemson a 3-point favorite versus Georgia last year? Georgia defense manhandled Clemson front line. And that's the biggest problem that Clemson has. Now, I don't know what I haven't heard you or Jason talk about. What's his name? Lay. He was one of the top recruited offensive linemen last year. I think he was a 5-star.
Tristan Lee.
I don't know what they're doing with him. Tristan Lee, yeah. I don't know what they're doing with him, but Clemson does return most of their offensive line. The problem is with the center. And I know they said they're going to move Plutney over and let him play center. The problem is not DJ. We've seen DJ when he had capable receivers versus Notre Dame and Boston College. I think they were down, 28-3 to Boston College. He came back and won the game.
Yep.
That particular coach is really good at Boston College. But my point is, DJ needs a chance to throw the ball. And you have 3 good running backs next year that's going to be able to run the ball. So you're going to have to commit some people to the box. I get what you're saying. They can't throw for 14 or 15 yards. It doesn't seem like that in the person he's looking at the offensive line. But part of the problem is the receivers stayed hurt in the offensive line was the issue. You can't tell me that this guy, what we see in versus Notre Dame, was just a fluke. And, I think he just got shook versus Georgia. And I know Streeter always says that he was hurt last year, so I don't really know what to say. I just think that this year's schedule sets up a little bit better. I don't think they should have played Georgia last year. I think they should have went home and played Wyoming. As a fan, as football fans, we want to see the best versus the best. So we saw a very good game, 10-3. You get through the INT, guy running back. That was the only score they put up. They got that whole defensive line returning. They go 8 or 9 deep at that defensive line. The linebackers are solid. They're more athletic this year. Corners, that's about the only weakness that you see on that team. And I know Dave, I said, well, Brent Venables is gone. Man, Joe Burrows will beat the brakes out of Brent Venables. I mean, I know Joe Burrow just went to the Super Bowl, but maybe people start catching on to what Brent Venables was doing. Because you go back to North Carolina a few years ago, and go back to Ohio State, hike the ball. Maybe Brent Venables need to go, not because he was a bad coach, but maybe because people were catching on to his tendencies and he refused to change. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, that defense was really good last year. Don't get me wrong, but maybe it's just time for a change. A new voice in the locker room. That defense is going to be excellent. I mean, everybody says he looked bad. He played against one of the best defenses in all of college football last year in the spring game. So I think people just need to take a chill pill and wait to see what DJ's going to do. I mean, that defense is just excellent.
Well,
so,
I will say
there
this.
ain't too many Georgias.
I will say that after all, I watched DJ play Boston College and Notre Dame the season before. I expected Clemson just to transition right into last season and be fine, and I didn't have any concerns about him. I didn't even have a ton of concerns about him after watching the Georgia game because I didn't think he had that much of a chance. Now, people were all over him, but he had guys in his lap the whole night. But the more I watched him throughout the season, I still tried to cut him a break because the offensive line didn't protect him to the level that Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence got protected. And even more so than that, for me, was the level of play at wide receiver compared to what we had seen at Clemson for the previous 7 or 8 years wasn't even close. So the receivers were not bailing him out like they did Watson and Lawrence. So I thought that the offense really let him down. The running backs played well, the 2 freshman running backs, especially Will Shipley, behind him. But so I tried to cut him a lot of slack, but I did notice he didn't throw the ball well. He didn't look good last year, and he didn't look good in the spring game.
Well, we're going to see. But, I mean, I don't know what cut that. Lawrence was, I'm not saying Lawrence, I don't think Lawrence is as good as Deshaun Watson was. But everybody knew what Lawrence was going to do when he came in. I don't know what Catnip was going to do, but I know Catnip wasn't on the hype as Lawrence was. Lawrence came in with, I mean, him and Fields. I think I asked you this: what separates him and Fields? Because I'm like, why is one ranked higher than the other one? And I just couldn't tell you what was the difference between him and Fields. And I'm talking about what they did in the NFL, but when they came out of high school, like, where are they seeing that we don't see? And they got all types of film. We only see a couple games, but everybody knew how good Trevor Lawrence was. And let's be honest, if it wasn't for Kelly Bryant, we wouldn't have beat Texas A&M that year. I know Trevor Lawrence threw a touchdown to Higgins, a jump ball that he caught, but we wouldn't have beat Texas A&M without Kelly Bryant. And anybody that say so, they got to be crazy. To go back and look at that game, it was Kelly Bryant's the reason why we won that game and probably went on to win a national championship. That defense carried us. We got a real good defense, really, really good. And I just think that at the end of the day, I'm not going to say we're going to win the national championship, but I think we're going to dominate the ACC and get to the playoffs this year. Now, I don't think Notre Dame, I haven't really seen Notre Dame play. I don't know a lot about Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame going to beat them. I mean, I just really don't, because I think they're more run the ball type of offense, so they don't throw the ball deep. So
well, real quick on 2018, and I know you're not a big Trevor Lawrence fan, and I could care less about Trevor Lawrence one way or the other. I'm not a fan. I'm not a critic. I just take him for what he is, which is one of the best quarterbacks in the last 10 years. And you're right. Kelly Bryant did generally outplay Trevor Lawrence in that one game against Texas A&M, and I watched that game. But there's no comparison between the two. It's not even close.
No.
And Trevor Lawrence, I know that the defense was dominant and the defensive line was maybe the best we've ever seen, but Trevor Lawrence did throw 30 TDs and 4 picks to win the national title.
Don't get me wrong.
He had a ridiculous season.
Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, right. Don't get me wrong. Kelly Bryant's nowhere in Trevor Lawrence league. What I'm just saying is, if it wasn't for the comparison of what happened with Catnip and Trevor Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence is more height than Catnip. We knew that Trevor Lawrence was going to eventually take over the reins from Kelly Bryant. We knew, if you go back to listen to our conversation, because with a 4-panel team, I said, I didn't have to get through Texas A&M. We were going to win. I'm not saying Bryce would have did what Kelly did. Did what Trevor did. But Trevor got done at the game, and we gave the ball to ATN, and he just took off and went off. So that team was really good. Trevor Lawrence just had a better arm and more football IQ than Kelly Bryant, and he's a great player. Don't get me wrong, he's not in the Deshaun Watson league. Because Deshaun Watson, to me, that 46-40 game, that's the best game I've ever seen a person play, and almost beat a team by themselves outside of what Cam Newton did. I think he was down 27-7 to Alabama, came back and won. Yeah, nobody on that team for Auburn. I get what you're saying, that Kelly Bryant is nowhere close to good as Trevor Lawrence is, and I totally agree. Mine just saying, if you go back and look at it, I don't think the situations are the same. I think that Kelly Bryant, I think DJ's going to keep his job, and I think he's going to play a lot better this year, and I think he has a better receiving core. Now we got Brandon Stokely. I couldn't understand why they were playing Ross at the slot position. He wasn't a slot guy. And I don't know what happened to the kid that was the number one slot receiver. I don't know, he was hurt most of the year. But, I mean, he was playing with freshman receivers towards the end, even when we blew out Wake Forest. He had freshman receivers. So I just, and maybe he couldn't live up to the hype because of the NIL deal with Dr. Pepper. I mean, you never know what these kids are going through. And I just think that everybody needs to give DJ the honest chance and see what he do the first 4 games. Because Wake Forest, they're going to be good, but they don't got a great defense. So the first 4 games, maybe he can find out what's wrong with them. And again, we running a vanilla offense during that spring game. But Mark, you enjoy your night. Give somebody else a chance to call in. Thank you. Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
I'll take this. I'll let you go. I'm going to do a comparison between UCLA and Georgia Tech.
Okay.
On why both schools are in prime real estate for college football talent, but the reason why they struggle and why they have struggled to be dominant on a national basis. So look out for that.
All right. Good stuff.
All right.
Right, DeAndre. Appreciate it, man.
All right.
Have a good night.
All right, bro. You too.
Our man DeAndre, BGPO Football Funk. So everybody head on over to his channel and you can check out that video he's going to post on UCLA and Georgia Tech. All right. I think we've hit the end of the line. I don't see any other questions coming in. No phone calls. There we go. All right. I will announce a time for Monday night, and we're going to look at the decade of 2000 to 09. DeAndre, you listening? We're going to talk old-time college football, 2000 to 09 disputed national championships. We're going to review every year, just like we did last week with the previous decade. That's the entire BCS era in that 10-year period from 2000 with the controversial decision of Florida State taking on Oklahoma for the national championship. And then at the end of the line, 09 was, of course, Alabama and Texas. And last call of the night. Let's take it. Welcome in. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, Porter.
Hey, Porter. What's going on?
Hey, well, I saw that you're about to wrap up the show. Heck, I just joined it, so I thought I'd give you a call and prolong it a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure. What you got?
Well, I want to say your wrap-up of the Georgia spring game and kind of the assessment of Georgia was really on target. I mean, it was pretty accurate, so I have to commend you. I tell you what, I didn't know what to think with all these guys going into the draft, and I knew what we were losing on defense this year, but I don't think this team's going to miss a beat, to be honest with you. I mean, the guys we got coming back on the offense are just scary good. The tight end room is unbelievable. The receivers are getting, if all things go according to plan, they'll be more healthy than they were last year. And then obviously with, Stetson is steady. He knows how to win. Heck, he won the game Saturday. Going down for last second field goal, his side of the squad. So if you think Georgia's going to take a step back this year, I'm just not so sure. I really think the offense can be better. I think the defense is going to be comparable to, say, what it was in 2019, 2018, which was top 5 probably. I don't know if you had to watch it.
Yeah. So to try to hold the defensive standard of last year is ridiculous. So yeah, the Georgia defense has obviously been great under Kirby Smart every year that he's been there to varying degrees. And then it spiked last year. So I would expect, they didn't lose everything on defense. They do have a lot of experience coming back in certain spots. They lost a ridiculous amount of talent, but I was just raising the question that there are guys that are talented, super talented, but they kind of settle into being decent, college football players, decent SEC players. Will the guys that have the potential to be game wreckers like Nakobe Dean and Lewis Seen and Darian Kendrick to be that good? Are they going to be that good? Are they going to be, do they have that extra gear? Do they have that extra work ethic, drive, determination, alpha dog mentality, whatever it is that makes really great high 4 and 5-star players go from being just another dude on the team that can play and play a role to being a difference maker and being the best in the conference. So that was my only question about replacing Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Nakobe Dean, on down the line. All those guys. Can you have a special defense?
You say somebody like Devontae Wyatt. You didn't know who Devontae Wyatt was last year coming into the season. I mean,
you're right.
Those are the kind of guys.
But he's a guy he played so well. I didn't have anybody tell me about Devontae Wyatt. I didn't read it online. I didn't have a guest say, you got to look out for this guy. I'm just watching the games and I'm like, I know about Jordan Davis. Who's Devontae Wyatt? He's wrecking as many plays. He's throwing as many guards into guys' laps in the backfield as anybody. So he just jumped off the screen to me. So that was my only question about the defense. I know the defense is going to be one of the 3 or 4 best defenses in the country. I know that they are, but are they going to be the best? And to your point, they may not need to be anywhere close to what they were last year because the offense, Stetson Bennett, I don't want to talk about the guy like he's Deshaun Watson or Roger Staubach or Vince Young or one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of college football, but he proved so much last year. So I got somebody in here telling me don't sleep on Georgia. I'm not sleeping on Georgia. I picked them to go to the national championship game twice in the last 2 years. So, and I picked them preseason #1 last year. So I'm not sleeping on Georgia. And like I mentioned in that video, I don't know what it was about watching Kendall Milton. And of course I've seen him play before, but just watching him in the spring game, I thought, maybe he becomes more of a #1 guy than just one of 3 that get the ball. He just kind of struck me as being a little bit more than the other guys. And they got those tight ends that are just, it's just crazy how good their tight ends are. And that supplements the receivers. And it's just, they're loaded. They are loaded.
Well, I guess what I was trying to say about Devontae Wyatt was there are guys waiting in the wings that are going to be the next Devontae Wyatt. I'm talking about guys that you probably didn't know who they were this time last year. I think one of the reasons you knew about Jordan last year is he just has an incredible personality. But there's a guy named Nazir Stackhouse, Jalen Carter. I mean, those are guys that it's their time to shine on the defensive line. And there's I'll give you another example. Somebody knew who Christopher Smith was this time last year. He takes 6 back against Clemson.
Yep.
And then suddenly everybody knows who Chris Smith is. And now Chris Smith is coming back for his, I think, 5th year. So my point is Kirby knows how to coach defense. And I think you're conceding the point. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying that I just don't see us taking a big step back like, LSU did in 2020 or Auburn did in 2011. Kirby's got it to a point where it's very sustainable, and I think we're going to be like one of these programs like Clemson or Ohio State or Alabama in terms of always being there.
Absolutely. And I'll even say it this way, and Ohio State fans may not want to hear it this way, but I have more confidence that Georgia's going to be able to replace its NFL losses and have the defense be almost as good as what it was, and the offense be complementary enough that you've got a complete team versus Ohio State having maybe the best offense in the country and then a defense that has the parts and has the defensive coordinator, but they were pretty lousy last year almost all the time. So I got more questions about Ohio State making sure that gets to where it needs to be to complement the offense to make a run at the national championship than I do Georgia. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I've got more doubt that Ohio State can fix their issues to play on the Georgia-Alabama level this year than I do about Georgia.
Interesting. Well, I mean, they were very impressive in the Rose Bowl. Obviously, they didn't stop a lot of people last year, but their offense sure was impressive in that Rose Bowl and the Michigan State game. That was pretty pretty abusive, really, what they did to Michigan State. So it's gonna be a fun year. I think a team to really watch out for. I don't know if I think Arkansas is going to have a tremendous year this year. I think they got Bama at home. Everybody's a big debate on who's done the best in the transfer portal. Everybody's talking about Ole Miss and Alabama. Arkansas is one of the best teams in terms of how well they've done in the transfer portal. Some of the guys they've gotten, like the Oklahoma receiver, they got a DB from Georgia. Watch out for Arkansas.
I got you. We talk to our guy Ty Hudson on Pig Trail Network every week. We talk Arkansas football, and absolutely, Sam Pittman's done an outstanding job, and KJ Jefferson continues to be a more and more polished quarterback all the time.
Well, like we say in the SEC, it's all about the schedule, and it really is. I think they have to go to Auburn. I think they got to go to LSU, but they get Bama at home, and I think they get Ole Miss at home. So I think they got a pretty favorable schedule. I think Bama. I think Bama's got a tougher schedule than usual next year. They have to go to. Let me think about it. They go to LSU. They go to Arkansas. They got to go to Ole Miss. It's going to be tough for them. Without the stud receivers that they've had in the past, I don't know. It was proven in the postseason that when you take, one or two of those receivers away from the guy, the Heisman guy, he's not the same quarterback. And I don't know. I don't think the offensive line is where it needs to be there at Bama. So I think it's a lot more wide open next year than people think. And I love what happened last year in the playoff. I love Cincinnati coming in and Michigan. I know those weren't great games, but the more new blood we can get in the sport, in my opinion, the better. And I have no complaints with the playoff. Obviously, my Bulldogs have done pretty good, but one thing that you talked about, I guess it was Thursday night. I think there was a lot of bashing of the expansion on your show, and I wanted to call in. I think I wasn't able to call in or something, but I really think the 12-team playoff is going to be great for our sport. And I seem to be I don't know why, but I seem to be in the minority when it comes to these YouTube channels. There's a guy named Josh Pate who hates it. You don't seem that enthused about it.
Well, no, I
just think it's gonna
want
be-
an expanded playoff. Absolutely.
But I think you said one thing. Okay, let me address one of the things that you said you didn't like about it is what it would do to the bowl system. If you have the round of 8, this will be the second. Once you get done with the buys, and you have the I'm calling it the round of 8. You could do all you have to do is take the 6 most prestigious bowl games, take 4 of those, and that would handle the round of 8. And then the other 2 that aren't in that rotation would be for the next round. And those would be the 2 that would host the semifinal. And then you would just pick a place to do the national championship. So I don't know why there was such consternation on your show the other night about the bowls. I mean, you just line it up, 4 of the most prestigious bowls one week, and then 2 the next. And then I didn't really understand why that was such a tough part of this expansion that you and the caller couldn't wrap your brain around.
Well, this is what I'll say about playoff expansion. So let's forget about the bowl system for a second. Let's say we don't care about the bowls. All we want to do is make the best playoff system that we can possibly create and devise for determining the national champion. That's all our consideration is. I love playoff expansion for a number of reasons I'm not going to go into right now that I've gone into a million times. I love playoff expansion. I like if all it was a number, meaning take the 12 most deserving teams in the country, I'm all for 12 teams. I'm all for there being campus games for the first round. I'm all for all of those things, and there being preference given to conference championships to validate and keep the weight of the conference championship games to give them the buys. The issue that I have with 12 teams is it's not a perfect bracket of 4, 8, 16. Therefore, there are buys. And I don't know if you've heard my rant on buys, but buys do not work in college football. They're going to be undeservedly earned. So they're not going to be earned. They're going to be given. And they give such an advantage that is unlike the NFL, an advantage to the team that is given the bye. If we had an equitable system that a bye could be earned like the NFL, then I wouldn't be as much against a bye. But we still have 13 people that are going to be giving buys to teams based on just their criteria, which they won't even unveil to us. All you have to do is go through the top 12 teams in the country any year, go from 2021 on back, take the top 12 teams in the country, according to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, look at number 4 and look at number 5, and you'll see that there's typically no distinction between the two, and that's where the line's going to be drawn between whether you received a bye at number 4 and you did not receive a bye at number 5, and it's completely unfair. That's what I don't like about 12, but I love the expansion. Absolutely.
But Mark, let me ask you this way. I know why you think it's not fair, but let me ask you this way: the Big Ten East and the SEC West are probably the 2 toughest divisions in college football. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So if you do expansion, there's going to be a lot of opportunities where there's going to be potentially 2 teams from the same division going to the playoff, right?
Yes.
So my point is, if you're Penn State and you're 11-1 and you don't make the Big Ten championship, there's a good chance you're going to go to the playoff. just like, and I use this example all the time when I call this show. Just like Texas A&M would make the playoff in 2020. If you don't go to your conference championship game, you're getting a bye, right?
But what about the team that wins a
conference
conference championship game and does not get a bye? What happens when it's 2019, or I'm sorry, what happens when it's 2018 and Oklahoma is 12-1 is the Big 12 champion and Ohio State's 12-1 is the Big 10 champion, and one of them has to be number 4 and one has to be number 5, and that's up to the playoff committee to make that determination. They're going to have to make a decision, but I'm not going to trust their decision, and not that they're bad or they don't know what they're doing, but I wouldn't be able to make that. That's my point. Nobody can make a decision that's valid in that instance because it wasn't earned. The bye was not earned.
Well,
and it's a huge advantage.
But it gets back to my original, when I called your show a couple weeks ago, is really the best situation to be in is that top 12 team that doesn't have to go to your conference championship game. To me, I'd rather be in that position than anything. And I know you've talked about winning conferences mean this and that, and I don't see it. I mean, to me, if you could put my team in the playoff every year, I don't even have to go to the SEC championship. I'm fine with that. So,
all right. So you're a Georgia fan. You're okay with Georgia not playing for the SEC championship. Let's say you're 10-2. You don't play for the SEC championship, but you're number 11 in the country. And you go to the playoff and you are playing number 6 Oregon in the first round at Eugene on campus. Well, yeah, and so that's your game. You're playing in the first round on campus in the cold.
Absolutely.
In December.
Just get me in the playoff. Just get me in the playoff. That's all I care about.
Okay.
And if I don't have to go to Atlanta, if I don't have to play Alabama, I don't have to play LSU,
okay,
and I'm automatically in the playoff. Absolutely.
But you're gonna have to play. But you're gonna have to play Oregon or Wisconsin or Michigan or whoever in 30-degree weather in December. The week before, you're gonna have to play Ohio State or Alabama or Clemson.
Yeah, but Mark, I would have already had 2 weeks off by that time.
Yeah, but do you have to play that Oregon game or that Wisconsin game the week before you play Alabama, Ohio State, or Clemson? You don't have 3 weeks to prepare for them.
I understand that.
They have 3 weeks to prepare for you, but you don't have 3 weeks to prepare for them.
Well, I mean, in that situation, I don't think they would have 3 weeks to prepare for me because they would have had to have played their conference championship game.
Sure,
I wouldn't have had to.
Sure, they've got 3 weeks to prepare.
How?
I've worked out the calendar. They'll have the time to prepare, but you won't have the time to prepare because you're going to be playing a first round game. And the thing is that you're not going to know who you're playing until the conference championship games are over and the selections are made. So that week that you're off is to rest, but you're not going to be able to prepare for anyone because you don't know who you're going to play.
It's all about rest. It's more about rest than it is preparation. But yeah, I mean, if I'm playing Pac-12 champion and I didn't have to play in Atlanta, I mean, are you saying that the first round of the playoff, which I find hard to believe, would be? Well, yeah, I guess it would. I guess it would have to be. Yeah, I guess it would have to be after that first week of December. But if it is a Oregon or someone like that, then yeah, I mean they would have to play. They would have to win their the Pac-12 and then turn around and play and then host a game that next week. And then, yes, you would have to.
It doesn't have to be the next
game,
week.
You would probably play Ohio State. So, but Mark, you would not have to play Ohio State that next week. Let's just say Ohio State's one of the 4. Ohio State, there would be a break for Christmas, and then you would just do the Final Four like we do right now, right?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen any proposals about the timing of all this.
They're not playing.
But
they're not playing a week. Come on, man. They're not doing that. So in my scenario, absolutely, I would do that. I would go, 10-1 or 11-1. Wait to see who I play in the opening round of the playoff. I take that every day, every year. I mean, no doubt about it. Because if you're the 11th ranked team and you don't have to play in your conference championship, you've got a couple of weeks to prepare. And say you do fly to Eugene, then you go take care of the Ducks, and then you may have to play obviously you'll play a tougher team the next week if you win, but then you have the Christmas break to get ready for Ohio State or Bama or whoever else. I mean, I'd take that every time. That's what I said when I first called a few weeks ago, is these conference championship games, we need to take a second look at those things.
Well, we either need conference championship games or we need a better way to determine a conference champion, because what we're going to have if we strip away the conference championship game is we're going to have 16 teams in the SEC, and they're only going to play 8 games, and that's going to make the conference championship somewhat invalid. What happens when 2 teams go 7-1 that didn't play each other in the SEC? Who's the conference champion?
Well, like I said when I called the other week, what I would do if I was the SEC, I'd go to 9-game schedule. Don't even have a conference championship game, and then whenever the final rankings come out that last week, whoever is the highest ranked SEC team is the conference.
That's
champion.
How you're going to decide the conference champion. You're going to leave it up to a bunch of morons that vote to decide your conference champion? Really?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Because Mark, it is the era of the playoff.
You're going to leave it up to you're going to leave it up. Oh my word. I thought I'd gotten through to enough people just displaying what idiocy goes on in the AP rankings and by this college football playoff select. You're going to let them determine your conference champion?
I just said you played 9 conference games, and by that time you're going to know clearly who the best team in the SEC is.
Are you? Did you know before the SEC championship game this year who the best team was? Who was the best team?
Georgia.
Well, then Alabama just beat them by 17 points.
Yeah, but who was the national champion? My point is, let's go back to that example. Let's just say they do the exact what I'm talking about this past year. Well, Georgia and Alabama are in the playoff. What do we care? Georgia's ranked.
One of them has to travel and play an extra game. They're going to care.
Well, like I said, it's I don't know. I just think that it's the era of the playoff, and the more teams. I just think the SEC would get more teams in if we did it that way, where you played 9 conference games and you let the selection committee determine which one of these 12 are deserving to get into the playoff. And that's all I'm saying. I mean, but if you play 9 conference games, there's a good chance the 2 that are clearly the best team in your conference probably already played head to head that year. So
why are we assuming that? In the SEC, you've got 16 teams. And so if you play 9 conference games, you're missing 6 teams. No, you're missing 9, 10. Yeah, you're missing 6 teams. So it leaves open a huge possibility of missing in every conference, except the Big 12. They do it right, not because they're so smart, but they had teams leave. So at least for the next few years, they play everyone. But I would either like to see conference championship games, which I love the conference championship games. I think they're phenomenal. Maybe just leave everybody else out and just conference champions make the playoffs. But anyway, conference championships I love. But if we're going to strip those away and we're going to go back to 1985, then we're going to have to figure out a valid way to determine the conference. And having 16 teams that a bunch of them don't play each other, to me, is not a valid way to determine. In certain years, it'd be like, okay, Alabama went 9-0, nobody else went better than 7-2. Alabama's the best team. But you're going to have all sorts of, it's going to happen every year in some conferences that you're going to have two teams that didn't play, that had the same record. Who's the champion? And my goodness, if these conferences leave it up to a college football playoff committee, you'll see me. I don't know if anybody's going to care, but I'll be throwing my camera and turning tables over and going crazy, saying, you're leaving it, your conference, you're Greg Sankey, and you're leaving it up to those 13 people to decide who your conference champion is. Don't you have any self-respect? You're your own conference. You decide your own conference champion.
Well, I mean, I think they've made pretty good selections, to be honest with you.
Oh, I don't have any issues with their selections, but why would I, if I'm the SEC or the Big Ten or anybody, look at 13 people and have them decide who my champion is? Screw them. I run a conference. This is my conference. This is our conference. Why am I looking at people that were on the board at Stanford and or secretaries of state or whatever they did decide who my conference champion is? That's insane. And it is written into some of those division breakdowns. If they get into some kind of quandary where they went through that tiebreaker and that tiebreaker and that tiebreaker, oh, the college football playoff committee highest ranked team. Why? that is insane.
It happened in 2003. I don't know if you know that, but there was a three-way tie between Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida in 2003, and it ended up the highest-rated BCS team actually went to the SEC championship that year.
Okay, wait a minute. 03 was LSU Tennessee was in the title game. So you're saying Tennessee and who else?
No, it was Georgia. Georgia played LSU 2003.
Oh, I'm thinking 01. Yeah, 03 LSU Georgia. Okay. Georgia, who else tied?
Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. They all have this exact same intra-divisional. Intra-divisional. They had the same intra-divisional record, and they had the same out of division record. I think they each had a loss in the division and one outside the division. And I think, from what I remember, is they said whichever team finished highest in the BCS rankings went to the conference championship game. That's how Georgia went over. Because I don't know if you remember, Florida lost to FSU last second. That bumped them down the BCS pecking order, and that allowed Georgia to go. I don't know if you remember that, but it was Ron Zook's last. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't his last season. I was thinking it was, but I don't know if you remember that. But it happened.
It's coming back to me, but they left it up to a system that just selected Oklahoma, who lost the Big 12 championship by 4 touchdowns, to go to the national championship game. And then 2 years prior to that, selected Nebraska, who lost to Colorado gave up 62 points and didn't even go to their conference championship game, that they would go to the national championship game. The SEC left it up to the BCS formula. I would go with a point differential before I would do that. That at least measures how dominant those teams were up against each other.
But Mark, listen, don't conflate the BCS and what we have right now. I agree with that. I think BCS is a bunch of idiots. But I like the selection committee we have now. Now, if you want me to answer your question just a second ago, why would Greg Sankey do this? Well, I can give you example after example why he would do that. Let's take Florida last year, 2020. Why would he want Florida to have to play Alabama for the conference championship when he knows that Florida is going to get the playoff? So if he would have left it up to the selection committee and we had a 12-team playoff, he would have had Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, and Alabama. He would have had a third of the teams with the SEC.
Yeah.
So that's why you leave it up to the committee.
There's all sorts of valid metrics and ways to determine a playoff system that would still deliver 4 teams from the SEC in that scenario.
True. I mean, you would have had that in 2018 too. I think LSU was really good that year. Georgia was really good that year. Alabama was real good in 18. I'm trying to think of one more I'm not thinking about, but I mean, LSU, I think that's the year we sent 4 teams to Big 6 games, I think. Or maybe it was 3 teams. But,
so, 2018, Florida played in the Peach Bowl.
Yep. That's right. We had 4 teams in either New Year's 6 bowls or the playoffs. So that would have been a scenario where you would have 4 teams. So anyway, it's a fun debate. I've been on here long enough, but that's where I stand, my man. It's
well,
all about the playoffs now.
I appreciate the call.
All right. Thanks.
Well, have a good night.
See you. Bye.
Yeah, I just don't know if you have your own conference, why you're looking for outside help to determine your champion. What are you, incompetent? You can't figure out your own champion? You got to look to some like outside source to figure out your own conference championship? That just seems ludicrous to me, especially when we're talking about 13 people that decide who's in the playoff, which that shouldn't even exist. I would love, if you want to give me the power to decide who's in the playoff, I would love to have that power. But I would readily tell you, because I'm an honest individual, I shouldn't have that power. All right, that was going to be our last call, but I guess this is going to be our last call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's J-Dub.
J-Dub.
Is your head spinning?
A bit. I think I got it swiveled just right now. We'll be okay. I've had that was a great call. He's a great caller and a great listener and viewer, and it's a fun and informative conversation. I just in no way can agree with anybody who's giving up power of their conference to somebody else to determine who their champion is. I don't get that.
That's what inspired me to call. There's no, as a Bama fan, there's no way I want their fate sitting in somebody's hands. Let's go play the damn game. And if you beat us on the field, fine. You beat us on the field, but we're going to determine this thing between the hash marks. My concern here, my overall concern with the expansion, and I wouldn't say I'm ardently anti-expansion, but I'm pretty solidly happy with 4, is how many games we want to make these kids play.
Well, that's a problem.
I mean, play 16, 17, 18. How many games are going to play?
Well, you know what? They're not going to play it. They're starting to show us now that they're not going to play them. They're going to start deciding they're not going to play.
Well, I mean, right. Well, and you're going to end up with, it's going to become even more of a war of attrition. Who can survive? Whose roster survives? You got people banged up and yeah, there was somebody on a stream the other night tossed out a scenario where let's just scrap the playoff, go back to the full bowl system. We play the bowl system, play the bowl games, and then just for fun, we're going to take the 2 best teams, somebody, and I don't know who, the fairy godmother, somebody determine who the best two teams are out of the New Year's Six bowl winners, and let them play it off. You can PowerPoint it. You can come up with a BCS formula, whatever you want to do.
I'll do it.
Do it that way. That keeps the importance of the bowl games alive, because now you don't want to. You're a kid. You don't want to sit out the bowl game now because you might win it. You might be one of the team. One of the two teams picked to play for the Natty. I don't know. There's just a whole bunch of ways to go. I see the train coming. I know they're going to expand. I just hope to God it doesn't go past 8. I don't want buys, and I've said this before. You want to play the quarterfinal round on campus, and I'm all for that. I'm with you on playing. I don't like playing in these these fly all over the country for the first round, fly to the other part of the country for the second round in some generic NFL stadium or whatever the case may be. But you're gonna play on campus. That's great, but you're gonna play with no student section because the kids all went home for break. So if you think you're going to get Bryant Denny or Death Valley or Kyle Field or the U or the Horseshoe, and all your students are going to be in there going crazy on New Year's Eve or whenever when they're playing in the quarterfinal round, they're not there. They went home. They're not in class. It might be great for the alumni. It might be great for the locals that get there, but your students are gone. I don't know if anybody's thought about that angle.
Well, I think that's one of our previous callers' points, that there would be a Christmas break. Like a Christmas break for the teams, so that they would play the weekend before Christmas, take a Christmas break, and then they would play the semifinals the next week. But yeah, they almost have to play on campus for the first round, because if they don't, what is the motivation for an Alabama fan to go travel to the Rose Bowl or Tempe, Arizona, the Fiesta Bowl for a first round game when you fully expect your team to win that game and keep playing? Like, that's not the game you want to be at. It's a big game, but you want to keep playing after that. So, but if you're going to go play at the big house, or you're going to play at home against Penn State or whoever, then it's different. Home playoff guy thing. I would love to see on campus playoff games, because to see every game in some NFL stadium in a dome, that's not college football. It's okay for the semifinals and the championship game, fine, but why are we playing umpteen games like that? And to your point, I would love to see a 16. Like if we were playing video games, or these guys couldn't get hurt, it was impossible for them to get hurt, and we could wear them out and they could play as many games as we want, I'd love to see a 16-team playoff, but it's just not reasonable. It's not fair to them. And they would start opting out of games. They would start being like, yeah, I understand this is the playoff, but if you're going to beat me up for 4 games, yeah, I'm off to the NFL draft. I don't think we have much of a shot anyway. So, we're Michigan State. I don't think we're going to get yeah. So that has to be balanced out. Absolutely.
I just fear that the final decisions are going to be made largely by people who are counting the cheddar and looking at the stack, how high the stack of bills is getting with all the money that's coming in, and not thinking about the best interest of the game. And you just know it's going to be a big corporate conglomerate business decision, and I don't see, obviously as a Bama fan, I'm hugely biased because it's worked out well for us right now. I just don't see what's wrong with 4. I understand, that fifth team or whatever. But you're going to go to 8, then everybody's going to say, "Oh, poor number 9, poor number 9." The margin between 8 and 9 was so.
Here's the difference, though, is that once every conference is represented, then nobody can bellyache. Because if you finish second place in your conference and you didn't get selected, well, you had an opportunity to win a conference championship. You
Right.
always have that opportunity. So as long as every conference is represented, I'm fine. Because then I understand that argument that people say, well, if we had 16, then 17 and 18 would say, what about us? We got screwed. Well, no, you could always win your conference championship. But now you can't do that. Shoot, last year we had what? We had the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the ACC champs all out.
Right. So you're saying in the Mark Rogers playoffs, you'd have the Power 5 champions and then 3 at-larges.
Yes.
Okay. And that would be even if the Pac-12 champion is a 3-loss USC team, they still won their conference, so they earn that slot then.
Absolutely.
Okay, well that comes right back to that puts a lot of emphasis on you got to win your conference, and I really don't have a problem with that. If your conference champion is that they earned it on the field to get into the championship game of their conference, and they won it. If they've got 3 losses, I don't have a problem with that because you set the bar. You said, hey, look, before the season started, here's what you've got to do to win our conference. And that team A, whoever the team is, throw your name in there. If they go out and get it, and that's the rules everybody agreed that we're going to play by, then you can't complain. Yeah,
That's what I think.
If we go to 8, I can live with the 5 and 3 in the first week on campus. I just really don't want us to go past 8 because I just don't want to see the kids have to play that many games. And I'm totally opposed to any scenario. Like there's some people who talk about a 6 with 1 and 2 getting a bye. I'm completely opposed to anything that creates a bye.
Absolutely. For those
hey,
people,
Mark, thanks for taking the call. Thanks for going live tonight. Everybody, if you haven't done it yet, it helps Mark. Share the video. Tell your friends about him. Hit that thumbs up on your way. The cost is 0. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, J-Dub. Appreciate the call. And I'll just make one other comment here. Just again, if 12 was just a number to look at a list and say, those 12 teams are going to be in the playoff, I'm all for it. I'm all for the 12. I think that's a good number, but it doesn't work in terms of brackets. It does not work. And then it awards buys, and I'm not for the buys. I don't want the buys because I've explained it a million times, and I will in the future. It's kind of hard to go back in the past and do it. I will explain after 3.5 hours. I get a little punch drunk. I will explain again in the future why buys do not work. I put up a video. If you just go to my channel, I think, and go in the little search bar and put buys don't work, it should pop up. And watch that video, and I fully explain why buys do not work in college football. So we don't want buys. But if there was a way to play 12 teams and they could play without buys, and of course that mathematically doesn't work, then I would be all for it. But it doesn't work. Plus, if you're a team that plays in the first round and you got to play you play all the way through to the national championship, to J-Dub's point, you play too many games. We're putting too many guys in harm's way for too many weeks. Yeah, that's going to add 3 games and all that. So 8 teams, 5 and 3. I've made all sorts of suggestions on what to do with the group of 5, either in or out. I've made that clear. Again, 5 and 3, it's the best way to do it. Play the first week on campus. There we go. We're good to go. Philip is asking me about Georgia 22-23. Well, let's do this, Philip. I posted a video yesterday, and I will find it, and I will put it in the comments section because this will be a much better description of what I think of Georgia football in 2022 than I can ever start to recite off the top of my head after going at this for 3 hours and 45 minutes. So I'm going to grab that video. I'm going to send it your way in the chat. I appreciate the super chat contribution. I want to honor that with about a 10-minute video of exactly what I think of Georgia football and my review of the spring game. 10 minutes and 39 seconds of Mark Rogers TV delight. Let me see here. Hang on. Hang on. There we go. And I'll send it to you and enjoy. I got that video, and that's what I think of Georgia football in 2022. I went over quarterback, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, went through the defense. The only thing, pardon me, I did not hit on was the offensive line or the special teams. But I think you're in good shape with your kicker who booted the game winner against Cincinnati, and he's good. And yeah. All right. Then there was one other super chat real quick. There it is. Vandy Dandy. A player who is guaranteed to be highly drafted should sit out a bowl game. Financial health is more important than playing a bowl game. Okay. Or we could just say that's their decision to make. Okay. Because then Vandy Dandy, if I'm playing for the powerhouse Vanderbilt Commodores and our team is, I know this is hard to imagine, but just take yourself there. I know this is difficult to do, but just imagine in your wildest dreams, Vanderbilt's 2-8 after 10 games. I know it's ridiculous, but just imagine Vandy is 2-8 after 10 games, but they've got a left tackle who's potentially a top 10 player in the NFL draft. Forget a bowl game. Why is he going to play the last 2 games of the season? Oh, it's the Tennessee game. That's so important. Why is he going to play those 2 games? His financial health and his health is more important than playing the Missouri game and the Tennessee game in front of 29,000 people that aren't even paying attention to the game at whatever you call Vanderbilt Stadium. Think about that one. Okay. All right. So, Vandy Dandy, hopefully you're still on the line to have heard my response to your comment. I get your point, but why don't they start sitting out late season games? How many teams are in contention to play for a conference championship with 2 games left in the season? 20%. So the other 80% of the players say that have a NFL future right in front of them, I'm not going to play the last 2 games of the season. What's the difference between doing that and not playing in a bowl game? Nothing. If anything, they're going to play in a bowl game and get to go on a trip, enjoy their teammates, enjoy activities, play in a bowl game, play in front of more people than watch them the last time Vanderbilt played in a bowl game was against Baylor, like 4 years ago. More people watched Vanderbilt play Baylor in the bowl game than watch Vanderbilt play any other game by far. It's not even close. The only time I ever went to Vanderbilt Stadium, and they probably don't even play at the same field, but knowing Vandy, they probably do actually. This was around 1997, 8. It's when the Tennessee Titans first left Houston. They didn't have a home. They were still settling on where to play. They played some games in Memphis. They played some games in Nashville. They didn't have a stadium yet, and they played at Vanderbilt Stadium. I had a buddy who at the time, rest in peace, Rick, phenomenal guy. So sad he's not with us anymore. Rick was a diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And I met him when I worked in Mississippi, and we became close friends. And it was so strange. I meet a guy in Mississippi who's from Ohio, diehard Ohio State fan, Pittsburgh Steelers fan. We meet, we became great friends. Anyway, we drive from Mississippi to Nashville to go to I think they were still the Houston Oilers. They were still the they were the Tennessee Oilers maybe for 1 year. This was before they became the Titans. So they were in that transition year or two. And we watched a tremendous game. I should look it up because I don't remember who won. I think the Steelers won because I think he was happy coming home. But it was a great game. Steve McNair. I'm guessing Neil O'Donnell was the quarterback for the Steelers, or it was Cordell Stewart. And it was a great game. We had great seats. Small enough stadium that you could. It's like it was similar to a couple of years earlier. I went to one of the big Ohio high school all-star games at Massillon Stadium. It felt like it was about that big. That set 40,000 people, Massillon, Ohio high school stadium. And so watching the Oilers Steelers in this low grade college stadium was kind of cool. And the place was packed and 2/3 Steelers fans. And I think the Steelers won the game late. It was a really good game. I almost forgot about that, but rest in peace, Rick. You were amazing. All right. So I think that's it for us tonight. We've been on for almost 4 hours. So this means that I probably don't do a scheduled video for tomorrow, or I don't do one tonight for tomorrow. I'll do one tomorrow. We did Maryland today. Check out the video. We started our schedule previews. We did Maryland today. I will knock another one out tomorrow. We've got USC coming out on the USC channel first thing in the morning. Check it out. I'll be back here tomorrow night, Monday night. Actually, later tonight, maybe, whatever the time is right now. Monday night, let me figure out a time, either 8 or 9 Eastern, and we will run through the decade of 2000 through 09 national championships disputed. Grab the Amazon link, hit the like button. Thank you, Mr. X. Rest in peace, Rick and Dwayne Haskins. Absolutely. We will see you back here Monday night.